Get started in a minute. Well, good morning and welcome to a regular board meeting for Wednesday, September 18th, 2013, the final day of our budget hearing. So if you will now join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Excuse me. Supervisor Pine?
Here.
Supervisor Groom?
Present.
Supervisor Slocum? Supervisor Tissier? Here. President Horsley?
Here. We have one person for public comment, Martin Fox.
Good morning, President Horsley, honorable members
Good morning,
of the
Martin.
board, my fellow veterans, Mr. Byers. We just finished reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of a republic that we describe as providing liberty and justice for all. As any experienced prosecutor like Steve Wagstaff will tell you, the way a person spends their money reveals their character and intentions. The character and intentions of this board will be revealed before the day is over. We have heard from those who are paid to provide psychiatric health care to those persons living with mental illness who have recovered enough to exercise their First Amendment rights and speak out in favor of services on Monday. We did not hear from those persons living with mental illness who are homeless, imprisoned, dead, or do not understand their need to seek treatment voluntarily because they are so ill they will not advocate for themselves. The governor signed Senate Bill 585 authorizing the use of Mental Health Services Act funds to implement and operate Laura's Law courts a week ago Monday. The executive director of one of the county's housing providers disclosed that there is a $3 million balance in the county's Mental Health Services Act fund a week ago today. You can start to restore true liberty and freedom to the mentally ill who are homeless, imprisoned, or who do not understand their need to seek treatment voluntarily, and their loved ones today. Studies show that assisted outpatient treatment patients are overwhelmingly grateful for the treatment they receive when they do recover. Please make a difference in your life and the lives of others by budgeting for the implementation of Laura's Law today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox. Now I'm going to move item number 5 from consent to the regular agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the regular agenda?
Move to set the agenda, approve consent agenda items, with moving item number 5 forward.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. So, our first presentation will be the Assessor, Controller, Clerk, Recorder, Mark Church.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I didn't know we were consolidating that office, but Assessor Controller.
Oh, did I call
Assessor,
you Controller?
County
I'm
Clerk,
sorry,
Recorder.
I mispronounced it.
Maybe county council,
I-
county manager.
I tripped over my tongue. The Honorable Mark Church.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Sacco, and Mr. Byers. I have to say, it feels a bit strange here, this role reversal with Supervisor Slocum, having sat up there for so many years and now having my predecessor sit up there, but I'm sure we'll get used to it. The good news is that Supervisor Slocum will be able to answer all of the questions that are asked, so I don't have to worry about that. I'd like to start off with with our mission statement. The words fair and accurate are basically at the cornerstone of everything we do, whether it's evaluation of land and businesses, registering voters, conducting elections, or creating and maintaining a public record of transactions relating to people and property in the county. This office will basically touch everyone, every resident in this county at some point in their life. Almost everything we do is mandated by law. In the Assessors Division, we produce accurate and timely assessment rolls which provide a predictable revenue stream for local government. We annually assess all tangible real and business property in the county. That includes some 230,000 parcels and 10,000 businesses, which are currently valued at about $156 billion. We also defend the county's opinion of value before the Assessment Appeals Board and, when necessary, before the courts. And we work closely with the fiscal managers for the city, schools, special districts, and the county to keep them apprised of roll valuation changes for their budgeting and planning purposes. And finally, we administer our Decline in Value program under Prop 8. This program assists taxpayers in obtaining reassessments of their property when their property values fall below their factored base year value. In the County Clerk Recorder's Division, we record all documents relating to land records. We research and collect the documentary transfer tax when property changes ownership. We maintain and issue all vital records relating to birth, death, and marriage. And we issue marriage licenses, register all fictitious business names, and register notaries public and other professionals. The Elections Division conducts federal, state, and local elections for 20 cities, 81 special districts, 25 school districts, and the county. We register voters and maintain the voter registration roll, and we recruit, train, and place poll workers and student poll workers at precincts throughout the county for elections, sometimes coordinating up to 3,000 poll workers depending on the type of election, and we provide accessible polling places and voting equipment for those elections. Our administration and support unit enables our 3 divisions to perform their core services. This unit also performs mandated services such as serving as the filing officer for various filings, including those under the Conflict of Interest Code and loyalty oaths, and it monitors certification compliance of our professional staff and ensures access to public information and services on our website. The fiscal year 2013-14 summary of budget and position changes. Total sources increased by $1.89 million or 15%, primarily due to an increase in election services provided to other agencies which were fully reimbursable. Total requirements increased by $2.349 million or 11%, primarily due to an increase in election costs for 2 scheduled elections. And as you can see, there's a slight increase of net county costs of 5% due to the addition of five appraisers. Fiscal year 2014-15, total sources decreased by $3.449 million or 24%, primarily due to the removal of the November 2013 UDEL election services reimbursement, and total requirements decreased by $3.312 million or 14%, primarily due to a decrease of election expenses as fewer elections are scheduled in that fiscal year. And as you can see, net county cost is essentially flat with total positions remaining the same. Major accomplishments in the Assessors Division. There were several major accomplishments. First, a $156 billion assessment roll was completed on time, representing a 6% or $8.8 billion increase over the prior year. This increase produced approximately $88 million in additional property tax revenue for the city, school districts, special districts, and the county. The county received over $19 million of that revenue. The timely closing of the roll is significant, and especially in light of the increased workload for this division. When the roll is not timely closed, Those activities which are not processed are deferred to the following year, delaying collection of the property tax. This can create a cumulative backlog for subsequent years, potentially resulting in a permanent loss of property taxes. It's important to note that not all counties closed the roll on time. In fact, 39% of the counties in the state last year requested extensions of time from the Board of Equalization to complete the roll. So it is a significant accomplishment, as I say, especially with the increased workload. The Assessors Division was also successful in preserving approximately 84% of the value at risk for fiscal year 2012-13. Last year, property owners sought to reduce the value of their properties in the amount of $5.6 billion through assessment appeals. So the value at risk was $5.6 billion. The division preserved $4.7 billion of that through the effective defense of the assessed values at the Assessment Appeals Board and through stipulations entered into with property owners and their representatives. Major accomplishments for the first time since the 2008-09 roll year, the number of pending assessment appeals and the number of decline in value reviews have declined due to the improved market conditions and the 5 additional appraisers that were hired. The number of pending appeals dropped slightly. The 5 additional appraisers joined our office mid-year, and after 3 months of training, they had about 3 productive months before the close of the roll. And during that time, they exceeded the targets which were assigned to them. The Assessors Division reviewed approximately, as you'll see in the graph on the right, 33,000 parcels in the decline in value program. This is a decrease from the previous year's reviews of 36,500. Properties drop out of the program when values are fully restored or there is a sale, transfer, or new construction resulting in a new base year value assigned to the property. Of the 33,000 parcels in the program, approximately 4,900 were fully restored, about 17,900 were partially restored, and about 10,200 had no change in value. This resulted in a net increase of $2.58 billion in restored value compared to an $800 million increase in the year before. Values being restored are being restored in greater amounts, and so are the number of parcels being restored. You'll see on the graph on the right, the total number of parcels partially or fully restored this past year was 22,800 compared to only 5,600 in the previous year. That is a significant increase. Under the decline in value program, we are required to review annually all the parcels in the program until they reach their factored base year value. As market conditions improve each year, more and more parcels are partially or fully restored, and less properties come into the program. And as mentioned, when fully restored, the parcels drop out of the program. Major accomplishments in the County Clerk Recorders Division. This past year, we expanded e-recording to include national submitters for major lenders, which resulted in a dramatic increase of e-recorded documents from 18,000 to 41,000 annually. And as you can see, when it was first launched under then Assessor Clerk Recorder Slocum, we had, I think it was launched at the very end of the year, so we only had 679 recordings in fiscal year 2010-11. But this has turned out to be a very good program, and we're hoping to continue to expand it in the future. We are in phase 3 of the Social Security truncation program and are redacting Social Security numbers from documents recorded between 1980 and 1996. We're about 20% of the way through phase 3. We've completed phase 2, redacting the numbers from documents recorded between 97 and 2008. And phase 1, we're current. That is the redaction of numbers back to 2008, which we've done. And we're doing redacting numbers on an ongoing basis as the documents come in for recording. With the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage, we expanded hours and services in the County Clerk's Division to accommodate the anticipated increase in the number of couples seeking both licenses and marriage ceremonies. Marriage license applications did increase significantly. A snapshot in time in July and August of 2012 compared to July and August in 2013 increased from 866 license applications to 1,274 applications. Marriage ceremonies in our chapel increased for that same time period, 149 back in those 2 months in 2012 to 271 for those 2 months in 2013. In the elections division, voter registration increased for the November presidential election in part due to the new law allowing online voter registration. 53% of all voter registrations received for that presidential election were through online registration. For the first time in a presidential election, San Mateo County voters cast more ballots by mail than at the polls. Some 57% compared to some 41%. And the voter turnout of 79.83% of registered voters was the highest for a presidential election since 1992. The percent, this far exceeds the state average of 72%. Administration and support, expansion of electronic content management and replacement of obsolete servers. We've implemented our new storage and virtual machine environment. This has reduced our physical servers by 75%, and that's growing. This has also allowed us to meet our growing data needs. We have increased our data storage capacity from 4 terabytes to 50 terabytes. And we replaced our backup with a faster, more reliable, and stable solution. We hired our assistant assessor, county clerk, recorder, and 5 appraisers, and we've completed the recruitment of our IT director. Major challenges, our aging assessor system application is not user-friendly. That is a major challenge for us. Recruiting and retaining professional staff is a challenge, especially senior level staff, in part due to the high cost of living. The workload continues to remain high, 4,500 outstanding appeals, 1,700 new appeals projected every year on average for the coming years, and 33,000 parcels pending decline in value reviews. Genentech appeals are a challenge. Our assessors division has been devoting considerable staff resources to handle Genentech's litigation because of the large amount of revenue at stake. The assessed value at risk for Genentech's outstanding appeals is approximately $19 billion. The property tax revenue at risk is approximately $210 million for the past 10 years. Genentech continues to file appeals every year as they build and expand existing properties. 6 staff have been working on this issue, and we anticipate the need for 1 additional clerical FTE extra help staff sometime in the future. For properties currently in the decline in value program, the difference between the factored base year value and the assessed value continues to be high at $7 billion. In other words, I seem to have missed the chart here. $7 billion will need to be restored to get back to the factored base year value of all properties currently in the program. And this graph shows the net assessed value of properties currently in the program at $24 billion. A significant challenge for the Clerk Recorder Division is maintaining the same level of service with the same number of staff while facing increased workloads. As you can see from this graph, the number of recorded documents has increased dramatically from 164,000 in 2011 to over 199,000 in 2012. We anticipate the same number, at least the same number of recorded documents or more for 2013. This increase is a result of improved market conditions, including lower interest rates. The same challenge faces the County Clerk's Division of maintaining the same level of service with the same number of staff while handling the increased workload of issuing marriage licenses. This graph compares the number of licenses issued in blue and ceremonies performed in red for that 2-month period I referred to earlier, July and August in 2012 and 2013. For the Elections Division, a major change is the growing number of vote by mail and provisional ballots. As voting by mail increases in popularity, these numbers will continue to increase. Processing these ballots is very labor intensive and costly. Another challenge will be same-day voter registration, which is targeted for next year after the statewide database is completed. Major goals, replacing our existing assessor system is one of our highest priorities, requiring a major capital investment and a well-thought-out plan for implementation. Other counties who have replaced their systems have incurred costly problems in the implementation. There are many essential components to this process: strategy development, system evaluation, development of detailed requirements, the RFP, procurement, system integration, and implementation. Also, the software vendor market in California has been evolving and maturing with mergers and acquisitions, resulting in new and better systems to choose from than previously. We recently extended the life of our assessor system by replacing our ASOS 400. This was done to provide an additional 3 to 4 years of service life, while at the same time attaining operational cost savings. The successful implementation of the new assessor system can easily take 3 to 4 years. The involvement of a qualified, experienced consultant to construct the RFP is critical. The consultant must also be experienced in project oversight and systems integration activities to ensure that specific requirements of the RFP are met and implemented. Another goal of the Assessors Division will be to improve operational efficiencies, to continue to improve efficiencies, to mitigate the increased volume of assessment appeals, and finally, it's our goal to create an assessor's report annually to communicate important information to the community. County Clerk Recorder, a priority of this division is to begin the long-term multi-million-dollar effort to preserve the county's official and historical land records and maps dating back to 1856. As a custodian of these valuable records, I believe it is vital to preserve them for future generations. We are one of only a handful of counties who have not started this project. There are only 1 or 2 others that have not started. Every other county in the state has begun this project. Upgrading our existing and outdated, and as I say, this is a multi-million-dollar project. Ultimate cost is going to be somewhere around $6 million. Upgrading our existing and outdated systems in the Clerk Recorder's Division will result in faster service to the public and a streamlining of processes for staff. In elections, an important goal is the installation of a new integrated telephone system to effectively respond to the high volume of calls from the public. An equally important goal is the evaluation of whether to retain or replace our current electronic voting system, which was purchased in 2006. Administration and support, we will continue our data storage and backup effort and continue to replace obsolete servers. And finally, we will continue our succession planning efforts. Mr. President, that concludes my presentation. Before we get to any questions, I would like to take a moment to introduce my staff, if I may. First, our new Assistant Assessor, County Clerk Recorder, Jim Arizari. Alex, and next our deputies, Alex Theriel, Assessors Division, Teresa Raby, raise your hand, Clerk Recorders Division, David Tom, Elections Division, our Financial Services Manager, Jacqueline Chen Lee, and finally my Executive Assistant, Juliet Fernandez. I want to thank all of them for their assistance and contributions in putting together this year's budget. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Supervisor Grum?
Thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Church. On page 541 in the elections column, you talk about having an independent consultant come out and do a review and audit of the election office policies. Will that take place this year?
Yes, that's ongoing right now.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's important to evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and if there are ways to improve what we're doing in all aspects of the department. We're starting with elections, and we hope to have a report in the upcoming months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor, no questions. Supervisor Slocum?
Church, that was a pretty good job.
No, this kind of reminds me when I was a supervisor, I would go around the community and give talks, and my high school speech teacher would always be in the audience. Finally, I said to him, I feel like you're going to grade me afterwards. So I appreciate the good marks.
You did a nice job.
Supervisor
Thank you for the
Slocum.
presentation. It's appreciated. Three really easy questions, I promise you. The first one is that phone system that you mentioned. Will that be installed in time for the next year's election cycle, the primary election?
I think that's a very good question, and that's the goal because we do anticipate a number of increased calls as a result of the redistricting. So that is the goal. We're going to have our IT director, who will be on board shortly, lead that effort.
Thank you. And then the next one was, do you have contracts with the League of Women Voters still for Smart Voter and for the distribution of voter registration cards to the communities?
Yes, we do. We still have that.
And the last one, which is a little bit more complicated and tougher, and maybe the county manager wants to chime in here, maybe not, but you mentioned 4,500 pending appeals, and you mentioned Genentech, and I'm just wondering if there's some kind of plan to try to reduce that 4,500 number, or somehow get those out of the system, which would involve, of course, your office and the assessment and appeals board, as well as the assessment appeals clerk, I think.
Yes,
County manager's office.
thank you for that question, Supervisor Slocum. I think there are a number of factors that will contribute to the reduction of that high number of appeals. One is this board approved the 5 appraisers that I had requested previously. I think that will play a significant role in helping with the increased workload. I will note that what I mentioned about the difficulty of retaining professional staff, soon after hiring the 5 additional staff, we lost 2 experienced appraisers. And so it is difficult to keep professional staff levels at the maximum, but that will help. The other effort that we hope to undertake here with the county manager's office and with the AAB is an evaluation of the processes with the AAB. There are a number of proposals that I have outlined in a memorandum that I've circulated a while back, and will circulate it again. And Mr. Holland and I are going to sit down and discuss that, and perhaps there might be a subcommittee of the board that might be interested in that as well. But I think there are a number of things that can be done with the AAB to streamline the process. For example, having a referee decide some of the less complicated matters, just one person, the smaller appeals has served well in other counties, and that would, I think, be something that we could implement here. But there are a number of proposed policy changes that can help. Those are two thoughts. I don't know if the CMO has anything to add.
In addition to what Mr. Church has indicated, let me address Genentech in particular. As Mr. Church has indicated, it is a time-consuming and ongoing problem that I believe can only be resolved with a global settlement of the philosophical and conceptual issues that continue to plague us, similar to what we entered into years ago with the major airlines that had some of the same issues. Without presupposing what that would look like, and I think it has to be negotiated, one of the elements to that, in my judgment, has to be an agreement from Genentech on their part to change what appears to me to be a corporate policy of simply appealing everything that they have all the time in the hope of seeing what sticks, frankly. And that is a tremendous time sink for us and represents some risk for us. And so that's part of it. And I do think we need to sit down and have those sorts of discussions. They're complex. We need the full engagement of the assessor in that. But I think that's the only solution to the Genentech problem.
And I have sat through mediation hearings with Genentech, and I will say very difficult proceedings. They insist on the methodology for valuations that were relevant and appropriate when the industry was first formed. They continue to insist that these methodologies be applied in today's environment, and they're just not appropriate anymore. And so there are some fundamental differences in the valuation approaches that are creating a roadblock until there's a change in the mindset and the realization by Genentech, as you've indicated. It's going to be very difficult, I think, to have any kind of global settlement. That should be the goal, but it has been difficult so far.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions, Mr. President.
Any other questions from board members?
I just had a quick question on that last thing that you said, Mark. The idea that the methodology, I remember this because I was involved early on with this too, and on that methodology, isn't there a state board that's responsible for sort of the formula and the methodology? Is that the State Board of Equalization?
Board of Equalization has adopted certain tables.
And does this get, those same tables, are they followed by companies like Genentech?
No, they have their own tables. They have hired consultants to develop their own tables that they say are relevant only to their company. So that's a challenge.
I guess the question I would ask, and I don't know if this can be done, but it sounds to me like, if the state has a certain table and that's what they think you should use, and someone's using something else because they think that's appropriate, is there some way to get some kind of legislation that determines whether or not a table has to be used in the context if it's used for one, used for all? If they're that different, then what's the table for an industry like that? And maybe determine whether that's the right table. But it just seems it sounds like we'll never resolve it if someone can have their own table that's different than what the state says is the table. It's a lose-lose situation.
And Supervisor Tissier, I think you hit the nail on the head here. These tables are used and applied by all the other companies in the industry. But as I say, Genentech has developed their own tables and are insisting on those tables until there's some mandate that requires them to follow the Board of Equalization tables for the entire industry. They are refusing to do so. And the whole purpose of the Board of Equalization is to equalize the treatment of properties, to ensure equal treatment for equal properties. But in this particular case, we believe that's not happening.
Supervisor Pine?
I'd just like to also make a comment about the Genentech situation. In the last month or so, I've spent some time with with Assessor Church and County Manager Malpe to start to try to understand this better. I mean, it's obvious, any outside observer would say this can't be the best way to resolve these differences. And but I have learned about how long this and difficult these appeals have been over literally decades now. And this is a big rock to move, but nonetheless, you know, we do have to really take a run at it and see if something can be done. Ultimately, Genentech, you know, has to believe that or want to do something differently because currently they are appealing all cases.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'll move approval or move it forward for later today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Mr. Church.
Thank you, President Horsley, members of the board.
Now it is time for the controller, the Honorable Bob Adler. Sorry for mangling that last time, but.
Do you want this, or do you want to take it? Do you want this up here?
Yeah, this would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, President Horsley, honorable members of the board, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. I'm very privileged to be here for the 158th presentation of the Controller's budget, presumably. It wasn't me personally who was here for all 158, but I'm here for this one, which is important to me. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce my Assistant Controller, Juan Ragoza. Juan is responsible for our administration division, our Controller's Information Systems division, our payroll division, and our the fourth division that you have is General Accounting and Accounts Payable. Thank you. And Shirley Terrell is our Deputy Controller in charge of our Property Tax division, as well as our Audit division. The Controller's 2013-14 budget has an increase in net county costs of $200,000. This is mainly from the change in the county's fund balance policy. Our requirements increase less than $100,000, primarily from increased internal charges. The Controller's 2014-15 budget anticipates a net county cost increase of approximately $50,000. The number of full-time employees in our office remains at 42 for both these years. This is only 2 more employees than 10 years ago. So it's truly an indicator of the hard work and extraordinary performance of the Controller's Office's employees over the entire last decade. Excuse me. I'd like to run through the major accomplishments this talented and dedicated group of Controller's employees achieved last year. They received the highest award for excellence for the county's comprehensive annual financial report, the 13th consecutive year, and the popular annual financial report for the 10th consecutive year. These reports not only ensure transparency by adhering to established financial reporting standards, but also by continuing to obtain a clean opinion, aid our county's achievement of a AAA A1 credit rating. The Audit Division expanded its use of automated analysis of financial transactions. This increases the scope and depth of monitoring internal financial controls and reduces the county's risk of financial errors and irregularities. Our audit division also completed 24 audits and other engagements. These included mandated audits as well as special requests. Continuing with achievements for the last fiscal year. Our accounting system training team enhanced the internal control and fraud detection sections of our financial system training courses. This training is now required for all financial system users. The increased emphasis on error and irregularity detection was added as part of your board's initiative to reduce fraud risk. This was done at no additional cost to the county. In conjunction with the Medical Center, Human Resources Division, ISD, and the County Manager's Office, our payroll employees implemented 24/7 time capture technology at the Medical Center. This has standardized the use of time codes across the Medical Center and clinics and provided Medical Center employees and management with the ability to monitor compliance with time reporting best practices. Our payroll division employees also work throughout the year to select and contract with a vendor for our new HR payroll system, which you approved earlier this month. Even more accomplishments. Our controllers' information systems and general accounting employees, in collaboration with the medical center employees, integrated a materials management system to the county's accounting system. Our property tax division worked to collaborate with the treasurer, tax collector, and the assessor clerk recorder to gather the requirements of our separate systems. We'll be working in October with ISD and the county manager's office to begin this effort with the end of selecting the most accurate, efficient, and effective solution to meet our mutual requirements. We entered into a contract to pay our non-community-based organizations vendors electronically. We're implementing this system in the current fiscal year. Our property tax division has worked diligently and very successfully with County Counsel's office to implement the complexities and the ever-changing landscape of the RDA dissolution, which impacts us and all cities and special districts in the county. One item that's not up here is with the assistance of Supervisor Groom and Supervisor Horsley and their staff, we have sent out letters this week to pay our core community-based organization service agencies the advance of the general fund money that we contract with them every year. So we're very excited about that change. Mary McMillan, the retired Mary McMillan, played a large role in that, as did your leadership. So thank you for that. That has been implemented.
Thank you.
Now on to our performance measures for next year and the following, or what we achieved this past year, the performance measures. Our team has met them with the usual excellent fashion. Their achievements include 97.5% of our survey's respondents rate our services as good or excellent. The county's comprehensive annual financial report received an unqualified opinion, as well as the award for excellence, which I mentioned before. Our accounting system continued to be available to our users 99.5% of the time. Monthly closings of our books were performed 100% on time. 98% of our payroll payments are electronically deposited, and we continue to work on raising that number. Our General Accounting and Controllers Information Systems Division implemented 6 process improvements to improve efficiencies, effectiveness, and internal controls. So our major initiatives for the next couple of years: we continue to increase our use of automated data mining for auditing and analyzing transactions to improve our internal financial controls. We will conduct an independent review of our audit division to ensure best practices and a comprehensive risk analysis is done. And we will continue to achieve the awards for excellence in financial reporting. We'll also participate in the county's Open Data Initiative by publishing an open checkbook, which we have done, And it came out in September for the first month of July, and we will continue with that every month after. So if you haven't seen it, please go online and see it. We will complete a pilot program with ISD and Public Works to automate our accounts payable process. The goal is to reduce manual data entry of invoices and improve the accuracy and timeliness of payments, as well as increase our discounts. We're also going to perform a major upgrade to our accounting system to ensure continuing vendor support and avoid the cost of implementing a new accounting system. Sorry, I lost my page here. Thank you for your patience.
We have nothing but patience.
Thank you.
Fine.
So we will participate in the requirements gathering for a countywide property tax system. We're ready to go ahead with that. We're going to implement, in collaboration with our retirement system, Samsara, the new financial reporting requirements for pensions plans, which are very complex and a game changer for financial reporting of these plans. We're going to participate in the implementation of the new HR payroll system. And we're also going to work, see if I have this here, work with ISD, it's not up here, to move our property tax system off of hardware that is actually failing and we don't have any replacement parts onto the cloud, which is a less expensive way of doing it than buying new computers. We will do that concurrently with gathering requirements that we need for a new system. But that's an issue we have to do immediately. Before I go to questions, I really want to thank you, the board, and the county manager's office, and really all departments for your continued input and support during the year. I also want to express my deep appreciation to all employees of the Controller's Office. The county is incredibly fortunate to have such a dedicated and hardworking team of professionals. So with that, I hope I can take questions and answer them. Thank you.
Supervisor Slocum?
Thank you. Just one quick, easy question.
Thank you.
In layman's terms, could you just talk for a moment about automated tools to complete audits?
Yes, we can go into the transactions database where all the transactions lie in various systems, because we have a payroll system that is separate from our accounting system. And we can look at all that and put in formulas that look for certain anomalies. To give you an example, we can go into our payroll system and get all the employees and their addresses and compare that to who we've paid from our general accounting system, either by address or by name, and see what employees have we written vendor checks to rather than payroll checks. So that would then give us a list, and we would go through that list to see if that was appropriate or not. That could be an anomaly. Is that a layman's example?
Pretty
I
good.
tried really hard this year not to use CAFR and all these other acronyms, so I don't want the crown at the Executive Council this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adel.
Supervisor Tessier?
Just a quick question. You mentioned, and I didn't quite follow, the advanced general fund payments to core agencies. Is that what you mentioned?
Yes, thank
Could
you.
you explain that to me?
Yes, I'll be happy to. We, every year, contribute general fund monies. These are not pass-through monies from the feds, pass-through money from the state. This is a general fund obligation for our core agencies. This general fund money usually takes some time to get out to them. So there is a cash flow issue for the core service agencies. So what we've agreed to at our discretion, we've added to the contract with the help of Human Services Agency, that we will pay this in advance, maybe all at the beginning, maybe half at the beginning and half at the midpoint of the year, to help with their cash flow. And we will obviously track that their performance is the same as it has been the last year, but we want to expedite the cash flow to them.
And you answered the second half. How do you go have accountability that you're not paying up front for services that haven't been rendered, and so you do follow that?
Right. Human Service, go ahead.
The
Supervisor.
other thing that we did with Bob's help is if one of our core agencies had 15, 20 contracts with us, they used to have to do 15 or 20 reports. Now they're all on one. So Bob was really able to automate a lot of that, and so that also makes the not-for-profits more efficient.
One of the things another thing is that with the nonprofits and RCD, because of their cash flow problems, oftentimes had bank loans that caused them to have to pay interest. And so this really saved them money in the long run. They don't have to have these short-term loans from local banks. And so it was really very helpful for that project.
And just one other question.
Yes.
Do we do annual audits on our core agencies?
No, we don't. Some core agencies are of a size that they are required to give us audits under the federal guidelines. We do not go in and audit because we don't have control over all their money. And to put ourselves out there as giving an opinion, and if something were to go wrong, being pointed at as, well, you went out there, is not having control of their funds makes us kind of vulnerable to that, and we don't feel it's appropriate for us to do that.
So how do you evaluate for accountability then?
The Human Services Agency contracts with these vendors, and in the contracts, they write the what's required of them from a reporting point of view, and they do monitor them. There are quite a few, I would imagine.
Okay, so they do the accountability side, you
Yes.
do the funding side.
Right.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Pine, is that a question?
Yes. Mr. Adler, earlier in the year, we talked about the importance of the internal audit function, and you brought forward a number of ideas for strengthening that. And are all those proposals going forward in your budget next year?
Yes, Supervisor Pine, thank you for the question. They are. We talked with you and Supervisor Horsley about finding a way to do that within our budget. We were able to do some of it last year with salary savings for people who were out or vacant positions, where we implemented the automated auditing. This year we have budgeted for a firm to come in, an outside firm to come in and look at our best practices to see if we're doing best practices for our audit division. What we may find out from that is that we need to do completely different functions than we've been doing in the past. I don't know what the contract will result in, and we may have to come to you and share those results and get your opinion as to how to proceed to implement them.
Do you have a sense for when that report would be completed?
I believe that we've had our first meeting. Are we looking for December sometime for their final report? So it's probably going to be the January, February timeframe.
Yeah, I think we look forward to seeing that. There's a lot of it's a big operation, a lot of money, very complicated, and our internal audit function needs to be on top of its game. And so I'm glad you're going out to have this assessment done.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think the automation of what we look for is very important, and I think looking again at how we analyze risk at the county is very important, and those will be two of the large results we're looking for from this study. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Adler. Good report. Now it's our Information Services Department, John Walton.
Morning, President Horsley, members of the board, Mr. Sacco, Mr. Malfi, Mr. Byers. John Walton, Chief Information Officer, here to present our two-year budget plan for the Information Services Department. First, I'd like to introduce my senior team that works with me every day in ensuring the delivery of these services. Mr. Gordon Helms, Kathleen Bouquet-Foster, and Candy Carno. They're an integral part of my team and are largely responsible for much what you see day to day here in the county. So I rely on them heavily, and if I get stuck on any questions, they're here to bail me out at a moment's notice. I appreciate them being willing to sit so close and throw themselves on any hard questions you put my way. With that, if we could just jump right into it. First, I'd like to talk about some of the performance results for this last year. And with that, I'd just like to say that, I feel very fortunate having joined a department that has so many first hardworking staff that really these results were reflective of their hard work. Even though I get to stand up here and wear the suit and take the credit for a lot of their hard work, it's really the staff and ISD that do this work day to day out in the field. And to some of the folks that have already presented, the assessor and the controllers, departments like those that partner with us, we don't do these things by ourselves without a strong partnership from our partner departments. A lot of these accomplishments wouldn't get done. But some of the exciting things, and I didn't try to fill up a lot of the presentation of your time with the accomplishments, but just some of the notable things that I think that we've been able to accomplish in the last year have included some of the changes in policies around social media. We've allowed people now, with your support and the county manager's support, to get people more engaged with each other in the public using tools like Facebook and Yammer and Twitter, which I think just creates a more rich conversation. For better or for worse, granted, sometimes, but I'm a big fan of the more you talk, the more people feel engaged in government, and I think that's a very important part of what we're trying to achieve. The open data portal, Bob, I think is a great, Mr. Adler, the controller, is a great advocate for that, and using that type of technology for the open checkbook project. I give him all the credit for that, and really taking sort of what we started in a small way and building it up to the next level and making it even better and giving that transparency to the public for access to that data. For us, I'll try to earn my stripes as a technologist and start throwing a lot of technical terms at you now. We're excited about what we call the virtual desktop pilots that we're doing up at the health department. It's been a real challenge for our department. We're a small department, as you know, to support the thousands of PCs around the county and dispatch people all over when things don't work. And in a nutshell, virtual desktops for us are a way to simplify that support structure, still give you a rich user experience where you don't really have to worry so much about the technology, but it makes it much easier for us to manage it from the data center and from our help desk to provide you a better sort of less blue screens of death, if you will, and long log on times to your computers. So it's something we've been successful with in the medical center, and we're really looking forward to taking it out to more of the county. With your support, we're moving forward with the ERP system, what we call the Workday project, and we're excited about doing that as well. It replaces several old systems that have been here in the county in a long time. We've been working with the probation department and helping select their new probation case management system with Chief Keene and his staff, and we're excited about helping them get on a new system. And we have enterprise agreements now, and all an enterprise agreement is really with these different vendors is, rather than every department going out and buying sort of one little widget at a time as they need it, we've started to bundle these things together so that people can be on a standard platform, standard software, and really just streamline the procurement process and give people access to the most current versions of the software when they need it. We've continued to strive to meet all of our performance metrics. We do occasionally have downtimes, as you know, and you've probably all experienced it from time to time, but overall, we've maintained a fairly high level of uptime of our systems, our networks, and our core systems. We process a lot of agreements, a lot of contracts that go through our office that we help facilitate contractual agreements with companies. We have over 1,400 radio subscribers on the public safety radio system, which we're also replacing and upgrading at the same time. Over 70% of the devices in the county, the hardware you use day to day at your desk, are supported by us through what we call service level agreements as a service provider to those departments.
Can I ask you this quick question on radio subscribers? I assume that's the 700 P25 system. Are other police departments joining in the sheriff's, or is it mostly like region-wide, like Alameda County's?
Right now we're primarily providing it for our own users, but we are starting to get other subscribers now to join us. Sam's Trans has also signed an agreement with us to become a subscriber on the new system when it goes live.
Alameda County and Contra Costa County going to the same system or similar?
They share some of the same back-end infrastructure, but they're not on our system.
But it is the 700, so you...
They have not upgraded yet.
Oh, okay.
To the president, I think, as he knows from his long experience with the sheriff, that the most city police departments are still on analog and waiting to see if this digital thing actually works out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. we're excited about it. And I appreciate the questions because it is germane to where we think the future of the county is going. And the new P25 digital system will be live next July, again, with the strong support of our Sheriff's Department and County Manager's Office. We've gotten all the stakeholders in the county together to use that new shared system, and we think it's going to be a real benefit, not just to our users, but because it's the newer technology where we can have a lot of shared users on it, we can start to offer those services to
Is it
more
still
people.
the tactical channels and the green channel on it, or not? They're not.
I do not know.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon. See, that's why he sits right there.
Thanks.
Going on then, just to continue to briefly touch on some of the things that are going to affect us in the future, and most of you probably already experienced this in your personal lives. The bring your own device phenomena will continue to grow for us. It's really not a phenomenon anymore. It's just a way of life. We all buy our own phones and iPads and have our own PCs, and we need to figure out how to integrate those into our work life and find the right mix of supporting those and protecting county data and security at the same time. Social media. Some of us are engaged in that, and it's a growing trend where people want to be connected more. The open data, as I alluded to earlier, I think that will continue to grow. I think the example of the open checkbook is only the first step you're going to see, where people want more and more access to data and information and see for themselves really what maps look like online and what the raw data is behind the scenes. In government, we're used to providing that data to people in a hard copy report form, and we've really reached the age where people want to see the data themselves and make their own decisions. Government cloud services, we talked about that a lot the other week when we were talking about the Workday project. That's going to continue to grow for us. There's been a lot of questions, sort of similar to the radio discussion. Is that a phenomenon that's going to go away, or is it here to stay? It's definitely here to stay because it's the only way that we and other governments and private companies can control and flatten out the capital expenditures and turn it into a predictable operating cost expense. And it's a more cost-effective way for people to share hardware rather than always continuing to buy and replace their own. And then for us, specific here in the county, we just seem to be in somewhat of a perfect storm of either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, there are just many of the systems that we implemented over the last 20 years here in the county that have reached, unfortunately, the end of life and have become constraints on how we provide services or the data we're able to draw from them. So it's created this great opportunity to replace them with new technologies right when I think the technology is really starting to mature and we have some great things we can go to. But at the same time, it's going to cause us to have a lot of projects coming to you and giving you updates on projects as we go. And then finally, as you hear in the news all the time, security and confidentiality, the concerns we have about those things will continue to grow. People have a lot of sensitivity around that as well. They should, and we do as well, and that we'll need to be thoughtful about how we implement these new systems and integrate systems we have internally with cloud-based systems to ensure we still protect data and confidentiality of the users over time. Our priorities then, to bring it back into more of the reality of what we're faced with over the next 2 years, is our goal is to eliminate our deficit in the service ISD department. We're a service fund. We charge for our services. We're going to implement a plan we're embarking on to reduce our deficit and eliminate it over the next 2 years through a change in rate structure and turning off old technology and bringing up new technology. We're going to increase our customer satisfaction. We have some disparities that we've observed through our surveys where we have some customers that are very happy with us and other customers would like us to see it do a better job for them, which we will focus on doing. As I mentioned, the new technology, we're going to be hyper-focused on delivering projects on time, on budget. You've indicated you have faith in us in implementing these new technologies by giving us the funds for it, and we want to show our due diligence by then getting those projects done in a timely fashion in the timeframes we said we could with the budgets. We're going to standardize around our core services. There's been a lot of discussion in the past here in the county about what does the internal ISD department do and what do the departments do. And so I've asked the county manager to help me, and we're going to set up some meetings starting in October where we bring in all the stakeholders and really start making sure there's a clear understanding for everyone in the county who does what, so that there's not a lot of overlap or confusion about how those things get done. And then we're going to partner with departments to control costs. We're never going to be 100% centralized in the county. I can't remember the last time I worked for an organization that was 100% centralized. So again, it goes back to partnerships. There's always going to be some spending that occurs in my department, but other times there's necessary technology spending that goes on in other departments, and we just want to make sure we're good partners so we understand that and they're complementary to each other and they don't conflict over time. To our financial plan then, I just wanted to highlight one thing on this. I won't belabor it and take too long, but one of the things that we struggled with as we went through this budget process is we had a very old rate structure based on old services and old costs that we haven't updated in a while. So we've changed our rate structure with the help of our core service agencies, what I call our core service, our big customers inside. Not to be confused with your core service agencies, which you would talk to about the external ones, and the budget department. What we've gone to in the new model is what I call a hybrid rate model, where some of the services we charge for are cost allocated because they're not easy to differentiate down to a very specific unit. So things like data center support and network support, where everyone shares in those costs, we've gone to what I almost call a tax or a road tax. It's allocated by employee and card key. So depending on the size of your department and how much you use technology, we allocate some of those costs out. And then we have two other types of charge, and one is the per unit charge. So if you have a radio or a phone or a PC, there's a cost for each one of those technology units. And then similar to your cell phone bills, we also have a portion of our rates that is consumption based. So the more you use, the more you pay for. And so by going to 3 different types of rates, we believe that's going to make it easier for us to accurately bill our customers for what we provide, plus also help them understand when we send them bills what we're charging them for and help them control their costs over time. Our performance metrics, because we're technologists and because we like data, we have a lot of metrics. I will just go through the next few slides quickly. Again, customer satisfaction is a big, probably the number one concern we have going into a lot of things, where we do a lot of things well, but we want to make sure that customers are satisfied. The management of time and money is important to us. Some of the other ones is the continued focus on really putting more, I would say, online and available. There's been a lot of things we've done that our metrics haven't really reflected, I think, in the past, which is the volume of work we do and how the volume of work continues to grow. So even as we move things to the cloud, we were just talking over lunch the other day about when people have problems with these new cloud-based services, who do they call and who troubleshoots the problem? And we still play an integral part in that. We're going to take responsibility for that. So a lot of our metrics reflect the fact that we're not abdicating our responsibility, and that when we move things to the cloud, we are still going to be the responsible stewards for the county and make sure that when there's problems with cloud-based services that we address those and we reflect those in our performance metrics. Major budget issues or projects that we simply want to highlight for you. I already mentioned that a lot of the older technology needs to be replaced over the next few years. We've reset our rates. One of the things we hope to talk to you about this fall is really the need to balance the full-time internal staff we have. We have about 115 staff, full-time employees that we use, but we also use a large contingent of contractors that have specialized skills or come into work with us when we do large projects. And because we have so many large projects coming due in the next 2 years, we're going to have to find a really good balance between our full-time staff and our contractors and use a healthy dose of both. And have that long-term strategy. Still, our goal here is to create these new technologies, but we have to create a long-term plan with how these are going to become sustainable technologies so we don't see these big peaks and valleys. Many of the other departments already mentioned a lot of the projects. I'm sure that we're partnering with them on the Workday ERP project, the criminal justice, the new criminal justice system, the website project, the assessor tax system. For us, one of the important things we're doing, an internal project, is what we call our service desk redesign. As I mentioned, there are times we haven't been noticed for our customer service approach to things. So we've really taken on, and I give Kathleen a lot of credit in this area. She's really stepped up as one of the leaders in our team and worked with our staff to kind of redefine not only our processes, but our training and how we're going to have a much more laser-like focus on customer service in the future and make sure our internal processes and systems support that so you get the best service possible. And then a new email system online office, virtual desktops I talked about. We're asking for your support on upgrading the network and providing better Wi-Fi access to not only staff but to the public. Mobility so that you can use your cell phones more, and then some more for us, again, internal projects, the reclassifying to the civil service process, working with HR and the unions on a lot of our classes in IT reflect older technologies, and we're trying to update the classification system in partnership with those partners because we feel like we need to get people in job descriptions so we can hire and recruit and retain staff better than we have in the past. On around Measure A, I'd just like to mention, I've said this many times, the network is integral to ensuring that all these technologies we talk about work well and are up and available. So we continue to seek your support around some Measure A funding to significantly upgrade and replace key components of that network over time. I failed to mention, but should have put on the slide also under Measure A, that we've been working in close partnership with Jim Sacco and his staff around a dashboard related to Measure A performance measures, which I'm sure they'll be talking to you more about and perhaps demonstrating to you in the future, which then you'll be able to see how these things fit together. Around the agile workforce, as I alluded to with the contractors and full-time staff, we are a pilot department for the agile workforce. And that's key to us because it's not always black and white when we go into these projects how we're going to staff them. We have far more projects than we're able to complete with the existing staff we have in-house, and we can't afford to double or triple the size of our staff over the next few years of full-time employees simply to get the projects done. So we're going to have to continue to work and find ways through different types of hiring mechanisms to bring the staff in we need for sometimes short, very fast, specific projects, and sometimes longer-term 2 or 3 year projects to get these large projects done and find the right balance between full-time staff. And we see the agile pilot projects and workforce project being integral to us having the different types of positions we need to get these projects done on time, on budget. A few of the numbers then for this next upcoming fiscal year, 13-14, you see a bit of a shift in our staffing. I will simply say that is related to our focus on things that are either infrastructure, meaning the things in the walls that you don't see, or your desktops, the hardware. That is one of the things we are focused on. We're also focused on applications or functionality that applies to all county users. What we're excuse me, moving away from are applications that are department specific, and so this reflects a transfer of 16 positions from our department to the health department to focus on health specific applications. And I think Gene Frazier's probably talked to you about their hiring of a CIO and how they're focusing around applications in the health department, which I think is appropriate, very specific business that is specific to theirs and isn't really applicable to other departments. And then you'll see that continued trend of 115 positions going on into the next budget year. And again, the change in our budget to reflect the balancing of our budget over time and the reduction in our reserves as we spend down reserves and funds against large projects that we had been holding money for, the payroll project, an ERP project, and treasurer tax assessor project over time. So you'll see a reduction over time in our base budget. With that, open to questions. Understand you've heard a lot of these, so I'm sure coming at the end, perhaps you're fatigued from all the numbers at this point. Sorry.
Questions? Dave?
I don't.
Thank you.
Slocum?
Thank you. Could you just talk for a moment and give us an update on the wireless network situation, specifically expanding wireless capabilities into county parks or county buildings that don't currently have wireless access?
Sure. There's a couple key components to wireless technology. One is, irrespective of how you complete what we call the wireless experience, which typically in your home you have a wired access point or something that you connect to with your device. We're coming at it from a couple different angles. When we approached you for funding for the Measure A, we had in mind that we knew that was one of the things we wanted to provide, but we knew as we look back historically and when other large counties or cities have tried to do wireless, that it's not something you can do by yourself. You need partners. And so we've reached out to joint venture Silicon Valley, to Cisco, to a lot of nonprofits that do this both in urban and in rural areas, and started to study what do we need to do as a county, what should we fund that makes good fiscal sense for our employees. So good connectivity to our buildings, good connectivity to our radio sites, to our county partners. And then if we do that piece, if we do the piece where we have good, solid, large bandwidth connectivity to the facilities we own or to our partner facilities, then what type of external partnerships do we need to bring in to create that what I call last mile? How do you actually connect then from that radio tower facility to a park or to a home or to an open space? And there's a couple good examples that we're pursuing right now that I think have a lot of potential. One is up in San Carlos. Those of you that have been up there and gone shopping or had dinner up there in the downtown area of San Carlos, there's an experimental network that Cisco put in place in partnership with San Carlos. That's one of the ideas that we think might take off for some of the more urban corridors and things like that, where companies, because they understand what I would call the revenue-driven model or the advertising-driven model now, have figured out how, if I go up to San Carlos and I connect to the free public Wi-Fi up there in downtown San Carlos, as long as I agree to their terms, in this case, they can tell where I am when I'm using the network, right? When I'm emailing my wife or texting my wife about, hey, I'm in San Carlos, they know where I am. So they can afford, in a sense, to give me free public Wi-Fi, because they can say, hey, you're in San Carlos. Did you know that there's a sale at this store? Would you like to make reservations at this restaurant using OpenTable? And so they can recoup some of their costs. It alleviates government of the burden of having to install and support and pay for all that infrastructure, because you can find private sector partners that can do that last mile connectivity because they see a benefit to it and the public can connect to it and use it at will. And in rural areas, it's a different challenge. But when we were working in San Francisco in the parks area, for example, there's definitely a need. People see a need in parks because they want to have a rich technology experience, believe it or not, in parks. We don't all just go to parks, I guess, to play Frisbee like I used to as a kid and stuff like that. People still want to have connectivity and their cell phones work and be able to do things in the parks. And so Google's one example, but there's several other companies that we're talking to right now that are very interested in working with us on providing that wireless experience in the park. For us, there's a benefit because people could pay for park fees when they were in parks or see little videos of what's going on in the park. But at the same time, a lot of these more philanthropic or nonprofit agencies, they're trying to create that type of connectivity for areas that have very little wireless or wired connection, because they see a real challenge around the digital divide. A friend of mine, Brewster Kale, who was an early successful entrepreneur in internet technology, now runs a company called Internet Archives in San Francisco. And he has one part of his business where this is what he does, is he tries to take wireless access to rural areas that, where English is a second language, you have a large immigrant population, there's no libraries, there's very little schooling, they don't have access to things. He tries to work with other organizations to figure out how do we put Wi-Fi access out in areas where it doesn't currently exist because there's not an economic benefit, but create connectivity opportunities so they have access to free online education, to books, to healthcare information and things like that. And so they're very excited to come down and work with us, and we're having a lot of meetings with them right now, and happy to provide one-on-one briefings or invite you to meetings if you'd like to come in and sit in on some of those.
Thank you.
Sure.
One last thing, on page 5-125, it has a list of major projects that you're committed to. But on the slide, you had some other projects it seemed like included. And I'm wondering if we could get a comprehensive list of all these major projects and maybe a column of anticipated start date, anticipated completion date? Or
We're happy
maybe
to
that's not possible, but
No, absolutely. We've actually just started a online cloud-based project management system. So happy to run a report for you and send that over.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Caltrans is real interested in Wi-Fi too. Is that one of your potential partners?
That is. I've talked to Supervisor Tissier about this as well, both Samtrans and Caltrans. Caltrain, I mean, a lot of these agencies, we all have similar goals of providing that wireless experience to users. It's a real benefit to people if they get on a bus or on a train and they can have sort of this continuous connected experience and
Right.
gets them out of their cars and onto public transportation. So they are one of the partners we've been talking to as well.
Good. Hey, Supervisor Groom?
Mr. Walton, I just want to say thank you very much. When you first joined our organization, you made the rounds and you told us a lot of the things you were going to do, and they're all here, and they've all been started, or most of them have been started, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move it forward for this afternoon's final.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent report. Thanks, Mr. Walden. I'm going to take a quick break for 10 minutes. Please go back in 10 minutes. Yeah. The rest of you guys here. Yeah.
Should we give John 2 minutes?
Oh, okay, we'll reconvene, and our next presentation is with our inestimable County Council, John Byers.
I will note that in the minute the lawyers walked into the room, the audience scattered, and I was, yeah, maybe that's it. I was expecting a standing room only crowd, but I guess I'm not that riveting. So, but Mr. President and members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to address you. I'm very proud of the work of our office, so I am never shy about an opportunity to talk about what we do. I did want to introduce our team that's sitting here, introduce them here at the outset. This is the management team from the County Council's office. You know who they are. It's Lee Thompson, Paul Licata, John Niblin, and Angel Puckett. This is really an A-plus management team. Probably, if not the hardest, certainly one of the hardest working management teams in the county. You'll find them here pretty much every weekday at past 6 o'clock, most Saturdays. And as much as I say, just please go home, they just won't go home, and all of them have happy home lives. I'm not really sure why that is, but they.
Ouch.
Very good, very good. I also want to thank the attorneys and staff who are up working on the 6th floor as we speak. Collectively, what a dynamic and dedicated group of public servants. It's you walk in our office, you can just feel a very kind of positive and collaborative energy in our office, and I'm very, very proud of that. So I want to say thank you to all of my staff. Here's our mission statement. It's a lot of words that I probably could more simply state as follows. That's right. We get paid by the word, as the county manager noted. Our goal is to provide high-quality legal services to the county. So quite simply, our goal is to provide high-quality legal services to our clients, and that's the bottom line. I mean, we need to be right, and we need to be responsive. I've worked very hard to create a client-focused culture in the office. Why? Because we are only relevant if our clients call, and our clients are only going to call if we're good. I identified a few recent accomplishments for you. Measure A at the top of the list. I mean, we as you know, we assisted county leadership in drafting the successful sales tax. We've also addressed many of the complex legal requirements pertaining to such a tax. We're remaining in the forefront of counties with respect to complex and as you know, constantly evolving state finance laws. regarding RDA dissolution, ERAF, VLF, triple flip, all of those very scary and frankly mystifying acronyms. We've assisted the county in all aspects of major construction projects, including the county jail and the South County Medical Clinic construction, and Lee Thompson in particular has done, and Eugene Whitlock from our office have done some great work supporting those departments in those major construction projects. We successfully defended a case of statewide significance resulting in a published Court of Appeals decision affirming local government's authority to limit firearms. And this is a case that local governments throughout the state were very excited about. And it was a preemption case, and it's made some very good law on behalf of local governments, so we're very proud of that case. We implemented the board's vision by drafting and co-facilitating the environmental review of a reusable bag ordinance, which has been adopted throughout the region by many public agencies. We played a key role in bringing to the finish line the Circle Star lease. That was a long process and a complex process, and we were able to bring that to the finish line. We assist departments in implementing many of the significant state and federal pieces of legislation, such as ACA, PEPRA, and realignment. We're involved in several major pieces of what we call impact litigation, where we're the plaintiffs, we're the ones bringing lawsuits, and we have many in our office, and that's something that is important to me personally as a county council. We've got a lawsuit, give you some examples. A lawsuit against Lehman and the officers and directors and Ernst & Young, lawsuit against many of our major banks for bid rigging in municipal derivatives, the lead paint case, a blood plasma case on behalf of a hospital, among others. Our office has been asked to lead one of 3 task force, and the one we've been asked to lead is the Information Sharing Task Force. These task forces sprung from the Beyond Newtown workshop led by Congresswoman Spear and Supervisor Tissier, and now Board President Horsley is going to offer some leadership in that regard as well. This is my 3rd straight year as the chair of the Bay Area County Councils Association, but we have other lawyers in our office who take leadership roles in our association. It's important to me that we're out there and making impact in our association. For example, one of our deputies is the president of the County Council Taxation Section. Our numbers remain pretty steady. I mean, the main takeaway, perhaps on the slide, is that due to an increased workload in the area of public administrator representation, several months ago, your board approved 2 attorney positions for a term of 2 years, and for that I thank you. 14-15, not a whole lot of change, and the numbers stay relatively the same. In terms of major budget issues, for us, it is a constant challenge, and we're not alone in this regard as a department, but it's a constant challenge and one we're certainly not unaccustomed to maintain high-quality general counsel legal services by maintaining relatively static staffing levels and without significantly increasing our billing rates. To accomplish this, we are doing 2 things. First, we are really trying to leverage technology to increase our efficiency. And second, we are decreasing our expenses. Just a couple examples. We're implementing a program to digitize our legal records, and of course, lawyers like paper. We have lots of records, so we're in the process of digitizing those records at a tremendous cost savings. Second, we're in the process of getting rid of our somewhat antiquated case management system. It's called County Law. It's about 15 years old, and we're bringing in a technology called ProLaw, which many of our other Bay Area County Council offices use and many law firms use. And it'll allow lawyers to access all of their files remotely from their iPads, from their laptops. You're at a deposition, you're in court. It integrates all of our files remotely and allows us to access those files and among other features. So that's exciting. In terms of how the proposed budget will achieve future performance goals, this fall, as we do every other year, we will mail out a survey to all of the in-house and our external clients to provide feedback on our performance. We will continue to strive to, quote, be a good deal for the county, unquote. Relative to other county council offices, we rank as one of the most efficient in the Bay Area. In fact, we measured this, our efficiency. We looked at two metrics. We looked at the number of county council lawyers per total county population as compared to other Bay Area counties. And we looked at the size of the county council, our county council budget, compared to the overall county budget as compared to other Bay Area counties. As to the first metric, turns out we have one lawyer per 16,000 county population. The other Bay Area counties average one attorney per 30,000. As to the second metric, we are 0.55 of the overall county budget. And in other Bay Area counties, they average 0.72 of the county budget. So we remain very efficient. In terms of future goals, it's certainly our goal to maintain our client satisfaction rate at 95% or better. And again, we're sending those surveys out this fall and hope we're holding the line there, if not improving that. We intend to utilize technology to increase efficiency and responsiveness. The third bullet I want to talk about a little more, and that's creating leadership opportunities. I do want to thank the board. You did authorize very recently for me to create lead deputy county counsel positions in my office. I have many super bright and capable deputies in the office who seek out leadership opportunities. But I've got 3 chief deputy county counsels, and I don't have a lot of turnover, which is a good thing. And so I am creating three lead positions: one for CPS, one for schools, and one I'm entitled general government, sort of a jack of all trades lead deputy. And in order to provide these leadership opportunities, to be clear, these aren't management positions. They're still deputies. They will get a 5% pay differential for this additional leadership work. So I think it's good for the employees. I think it's going to make our office even run more smoothly, and I think it's good for succession planning. So I want to thank you for that. Last, we are implementing the collaborative performance management system for our staff, and it'll allow staff to be in charge of their career and performance goals in a way that is consistent with our overall mission, so that we're all working on the same sheet of music. The last thing I wanted to say, I just want to thank the board and the county manager and staff for all your support to our office. We really feel the support, and thank you very much for that. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Supervisor Tessier?
I just want to say we're happy to provide job security by bringing you probably some of the most difficult cases and the most difficult issues you could possibly have. But I do want to say, when you look at the accomplishments and you look at what's happening as we move forward, I guess one of the questions I worry about a little bit is are you able to handle the workload as we continue to be sort of a litigious society? I mean, we always have contemplation of new lawsuits. If you look at the controversial type issues that you've tackled this last year, the complexity of it, do you see in the coming years that it's going to get even more complex, or do you feel like you're able to handle what's coming down the pike?
No, that's a great question, Supervisor Tissier. Thank you for that. Look, I mean, if the board were to authorize 3 lawyers, I mean, they would all be busy starting tomorrow. I mean, they would all be very busy. But I try to hire well. I try to hire people who have experience and the talent and the ability to juggle a lot of complex things, and who want that diversity of legal exposure. And so I try to hire well. I mean, I think our lawyers are very efficient. People are extremely busy and sometimes, frankly, pretty stretched. But it's my job, if I feel we're at the breaking point or we can't, we're at the point where I need to come to the county manager and the board for additional help, I will not be shy about doing that. So thank you for that question, though.
And also, I'd like to just say thank you on the information sharing task force. That's something that's we're still doing a lot of work on, and we're just really at the beginning. And so I know that's going to take up some time, and I know we're going to go to a conference in San Diego, but I do appreciate the help there. And the other one that you spent a lot of time, and we all spent a lot of time, was on the district line situation. And I really appreciate Paul Okada and David Silverman. That's, it's been a lot of work. We're not done yet. And I think the heavy lifting is just about to happen. Our next meeting is the last meeting before it comes to our board. So besides all these other, all of these took time, but those two, really stand out because they're right in the present. So I really want to thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Supervisor Slocum?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that staffing question. We talked with the assessor earlier about the Genentech case and the appeals. And from my experience, I know that Genentech consumes an inordinate amount of lawyer time. And I'm just wondering, I know you manage very efficiently and it's a well-run department, but have you thought about, or is there a need to entertain some kind of agile situation for those kind of very complex tax cases like Genentech?
Right. And, I will say as a general proposition that and I think that's my job as general counsel, if I feel there's an area of specialization or I feel like I need some additional resource, I will let you know that, and we have brought in outside counsel where appropriate. We were having conversations with Mark Church about that staffing issue on Genentech. We have, it's been a case in some form in our office for decades. And I think frankly, I think we have very able staff that have been handling it. Lee Thompson, Rebecca Archer is one of the best tax lawyers in the state, in-house tax lawyers in the state for counties. So I think we have the right, the right talent, and I think we can. I see no reason why we can't continue to resource that well. I don't have any concern that we're being out-lawyered in front of the AAB. In fact, we won the last case, and then it got overturned on the last case before the AAB, Genentech case. It got overturned in the Superior Court on a clerical error, but I do feel like it's a case that we can staff. But we are going to be meeting with Mark Church to really take a look at that, and I'm certainly open to suggestion.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pine?
I just wanted to extend my thanks to John and the team. It is a pleasure working with all of you, and you do just a tremendous job. Your responsiveness is amazing. You are very accessible. Good lawyers know the details, but also have the ability to apply judgment, and you do that in spades. And it's clear that you like what you do, and you're passionate about your mission. And that makes it fun to work with you. It makes it fun to come to work and deal, work on these very thorny issues because, you bring a passion zest to it, which I enjoy. So I sincerely thank you for all you've done.
Supervisor Groom?
Share my colleagues' appreciation for what all you do and how much you help us and how much you help the committees that we serve on. So it just goes and goes and goes. But thank you, and you're all just so accessible and just terrific to work with.
I'll just add my thanks as well that you serve not only the board well, but also the entire county, so we appreciate that. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Byers. And next is our esteemed county manager.
Mr. President, members of the board, before the county council leaves, I can't help but comment on one of his performance matrix. Being selected chair of the statewide county council association 3 years in a row is a rookie mistake. You always attend the meeting that they select the chair. That way you're protected from being elected multiple times in the chairmanship. So John, that's a lesson you should
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The county manager, clerk of the board's budget is next up. This budget represents 5 different program areas: county management, clerk of the board responsibilities, ably handled by Becky Romero. Special projects and grants. Particular interest is the energy upgrade project, which we've been working on through Peggy Jensen, the Connect Redwood City and the Bay Area Bike Share. We have the podium where the bike share bikes are on our property, and finally the Center for Continuous Improvement, Process Improvement, or LEAN. And we're really looking at that in order to increase resources devoted to that, and also examining the approach that the hospitals used, which uses expensive consultants in addition to staff, but has, as the board is well aware, produced some very impressive results. And we're evaluating that and may bring back later in the year a proposal in that regard. So that continues to evolve. Real property in community services. Obviously, we have many lease properties, and the lease at Circle Star were certainly major efforts, and also the economic development of county property. And of course, new to our office this year is the Workforce Investment Program, which has been brought in under Dave Holland to work both on workforce investment and economic development. We have a number of accomplishments we're quite proud of this year, and I would hasten to add that all of our accomplishments are realized through the policies of the board and the hard work of the men and women of the county that really produce the results that we're all proud of day in and day out. This year we've achieved again one of 2 California counties to receive a AAA credit rating, the highest that the financial community can award. It attests to the long-term sound financial policies of the board, and I think the cost-effective management of county resources, something that the board should take singular pride in, because it really is a report card on how well you serve as stewards of the county's resources. We've completed the lease of all the Circle Star property this year, which is going to generate approximately $6 million of additional revenue for the county. That was a very wise investment that the board made several years ago. We're evaluating the possibility of selling the property and realizing the full value of that asset to be applied to other county needs, and we'll be talking to the board more about that in the future. In terms of Measure A proposals and dashboards, obviously that was a major undertaking, again, in connection with the board. We've talked about it continuously through the budget hearings, and of course in the months and weeks leading up to the budget hearings, the board had several hearings, received many different report backs on Measure A projects, and today of course will be the culmination of all that when the board actually votes on the appropriation of Measure A funds for the coming 2 fiscal years. The board meeting videos are now on YouTube currently, so that those members of the public that want to utilize this device as a way to view the ongoing meetings of the Board of Supervisors, that's up immediately after the board meetings. The open data policy, which John Walton spoke to earlier, our office was very involved in that, Raina Ferralis in particular. The open checkbook, I think it is part of the evolving efforts of the Board of Supervisors in order to reach out and engage the public in as many new and different ways, using as many new and different mediums of involvement as possible to help not only inform but help direct the development of public policy. The supervisorial district lines Supervisor Tessier just spoke to, our office through Marshall Wilson and through the County Council's office have been principally involved in staffing that ongoing effort. We have, as you know, been very involved in several legislative efforts, some successful and some not successful in Sacramento. Certainly the in lieu VLF vehicle license fee effort as it relates to ERAF is ongoing, and we're working with our legislative delegation to try to correct that. Unfortunately, as I reported earlier this week, we have not been successful in obtaining funding for the Maple Street Correction Center. We are reversing directions somewhat to put in an application for the old McGuire facility, which is in need of substantial improvement. And really, it helps to bring all of our facilities more in line with the board's view and vision and policy about how correction should be undertaken in this county, with a heavy emphasis on programming, a heavy emphasis on trying to help people that are in the system meet their personal needs so that when they are released, they don't offend again. And this would certainly be very helpful in that regard. I mentioned the implementation of energy upgrades, bike share, and the Connect Redwood City programs. It's part of our ongoing effort that we continue to look for new and better ways to be good stewards of the use of energy and other resources besides financial resources in this county, and we will continue in that regard. In terms of our two-year plan and priorities, the Agile implementation of the Agile organization pilots is certainly key among those, and we are now engaged in negotiations with two of our employee bargaining units with respect to implementation of some of the pilots that would occur in their area of representation. We're working on the Shared Vision 2025 performance dashboards and performance reviews. That includes the Measure A dashboards. At the conclusion of my presentation this morning, we'll have a demonstration of that for the board so you can get a feel for where we are in that process, and I think you'll be very, very pleased, and obviously that's ongoing. Open government and civic engagement, I've spoken to that regarding the open checkbook and the open data continued. We're going to find new and other ways to keep that information flowing on a two-way basis to our constituents. Capital planning and economic development, a high priority of the board. I think you've seen in this budget process a real emphasis on capital improvements and on our ability and capacity to get those improvements out on time and within budget. Economic development, now that the Workforce Investment Board has a new executive director, Mr. Holland will be actively engaged in a number of efforts. He is at present, and we will be informing the board of those as we go through the next 2 years. Maple Street Correctional Center planning and financing. We intend to sell bonds this fall, and of course the board will be intricately involved in that. 2-year budget implementation. We will be monitoring that budget and reporting to the board accordingly. We're automating the boards and commissions agenda and also automating the assessment appeals process to work out any of the problems that we've had in the past and timely review of those appeals. The North Fair Oaks Forward Initiative is a major work product that we're looking forward to in the next 2 years. There's a great plan that's been implemented. We intend to work very closely with Supervisor Slocum in making sure that many of the elements of that plan get initiated in the next 2 years, and certainly the board's tentative approval to this point in time of the resources necessary to undertake that is extremely helpful, and we appreciate that. And along with what Assessor Church talked about earlier today, digitizing all historic board meeting documents to make those available for posterity. In terms of our performance goals, we're looking forward to maintaining a 90% customer satisfaction rating and completing 80% of our outcome, productivity, and benchmarks on all county programs, maintaining our AAA credit ratings, receiving 100% satisfaction from the board and clerk of the board services, and 100% getting the board items out on time and correct. Also, we continue to work very hard at meeting our 2020 targets and reducing our CO2 emissions as part of the Bay Area and state plan to reduce our carbon footprint. 90% continuous process improvement in lean, and as I mentioned, we are certainly looking at new and different ways to keep that process moving forward. With respect to our office's Agile pilot fellowship program, we believe that we will be successful in using fellows and anticipate coming to the board and recommending the expansion of the fellowship program to other areas. We think this is a great opportunity to seek out recent college graduates to work as part of a team and to give them challenging professional work assignments. Some of those will remain with the organization, have a commitment, hopefully a lifelong commitment to public service. Others may choose a path in the private sector, but we think that initial experience in working in government will serve us well in the long term in terms of civic engagement, of having more and more people out in the community that have a great understanding for the role of government in all aspects of the work that we do. Also, to enhance our partnerships with local universities, we've done a lot in the last few years, and we think the fellowship program continues that trend. We'll utilize fellows for a 1 to 3 year period, and they'll be used in areas of sustainability, policy and performance, management and community outreach, and engagement assignments. Some of the major budget changes for 13-14, we are transferring the $3 million from the Second Chance Achieve 180 that Mr. Keene spoke about yesterday to the probation department, including one position. We're also transferring the workforce investment program from HSA, and includes 21 positions, not all of which are filled, I might add, to our office to more closely integrate those efforts and economic development and really shift the emphasis to working with the private employers in our community to identify and to develop public policies that really meet their needs in terms of future workforce. And I appreciate Mr. Holland's willingness and energy in working through a long and a sometimes cumbersome process to bring us to this point, and look forward to what will develop in the next coming months. It also, we're transferring a WIB position from our office to ISD as we complete the development of our revised web presence. We think that the maintenance of that and the ongoing coordination of that probably is more suited for IS, and that will take place. We're adding 2 grant-funded energy upgrade positions that we've talked to you about previously, and funding for rotational analysts for the budget and performance assignments. I mentioned funding for lean, funding for the automated assessment appeals process, and finally increases in salary and benefits, and including merit increases, retirement, health, etc., and the replacement of some automation equipment in our office represent the major changes in our budget for next year. For 14-15, the one-time purchases are being removed from the budget, and also the reduction or elimination of grant funding that will terminate in that year. You probably can't see this very well, but this represents the a change in organization of the county manager's office. There's not significant changes, but a few that I want to call out for your attention. With the retirement of Deputy County Manager Mary McMillan, that deputy manager position is being recast as one that will work closely with criminal justice and realignment issues. We're in the process of recruiting for that now. In fact, we anticipate a oral board, I believe, the first week in October. So I hope to have an announcement shortly thereafter with respect to that position. Also, there will be some change in the work of the deputy county managers. The deputy county manager for community services work will continue to be primarily the same in that that position really represents, if you will, the city manager for the unincorporated area and the services that are provided to the unincorporated area are grouped within that department. I'm hoping that we will be able to continue to emphasize customer service and outreach to the unincorporated community and to provide certainly the ability to access county services in a more streamlined and efficient manner. With respect to the new deputy county manager for criminal justice and the deputy county manager for performance, health, and human services, which of course is Reina Ferralis, there are a number of areas that I believe that our office can and should take the lead in cross-departmental efforts, and we haven't always done the best job that we could in those areas. And I hope that both of these positions will have the time and the resources now in order to lead those major cross-departmental countywide efforts, and I'm looking forward to utilizing those two deputies in that particular way. In order to accomplish that, the budget and policy unit will report directly to me going forward. I apologize now to Mr. Sacco for that. He's going to work much harder and longer than he has in the past.
Good for him.
He says it's not possible. We'll see. Also, we're shifting the emphasis gradually over a period of time from budget and performance to also policy work, and we believe in the process of doing that really enhance the board's ability to take the time and review major policy issues with really good research and development input from this office. So I say that's an ongoing effort. We're just at the initial stages of it, but we believe, among other things, this reorganization will allow us to do that over time. That then means that intergovernmental relations and community and civic engagement work, as well as economic development and parks will remain with our office and directly report to Dave. Parks is the one change in that had moved from Peggy to Dave, really representing the de facto experience and reality that when there were major issues that the board went to and I went to and Peggy went to, Dave and you know, you could dress him up in a suit and a tie, but you really can't get him out of the parks business totally. So for as long as we will be fortunate to have Dave with us, he will continue to do that. In terms of our budget, our net county cost as a result of all of the changes will be reduced, and again that reflects the change primarily of Chief 180 going to probation and us accepting the WIB, which is primarily funded from the federal government, so there's very little impact from a budget standpoint on our net county costs as a result of that change. In 15, it's simply a maintenance budget that incorporates all those previous changes. Our net county cost goes up slightly by less than 1%. And finally, thank you to the Board of Supervisors for your continued engagement and leadership in all aspects of this county, and your encouragement to myself and my staff in our carrying out of our daily responsibilities, and to my staff. Those that you see and those that you don't see, all critical team members, all do an outstanding job, all go above and beyond what's called for, and I'm very, very proud to be able to work with them and with the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions.
just thank you
Okay,
very
well,
much.
thank- Supervisor Tessier.
No, not really a question. I was just going to say to John and to the staff, thank you very much. We've accomplished so much this past year and obviously the previous years as well, but we've all had a lot on our plate. But we seem to get through it, and we seem to get through it very well. So I just want to say thank you for keeping us, in the right direction.
Just add my thanks. Thanks for your leadership, and thanks for the staff as well. They've always been extremely responsive and helpful, so thanks. With that, do we have a motion?
So move.
All in favor? All in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Before we get to the board, Raina, are we ready to do the demonstration? Let's do the demonstration.
Mr. Sacco, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. My name is Raina Farless, Deputy County Manager. I have Shanna Collins here who will help drive the dashboards. So this is our live SMC performance site. Mr. Maltby mentioned in his presentation that the board did direct us to build online dashboards for Measure A. So that is the first set of the dashboards that you'll see here. This is a live site, so if you do go to performance.smcgov.org, this is what you will see. And what we want to do this morning is to show you a couple of the Measure A initiatives. So with Measure A, there are 22 proposals in front of the board. We did build what they call a leaf page for each proposal that will have the board item and a number of charts and graphs, and we'll show you some of the data points that are in there. The first example is the fire replacement vehicle proposal. So this is a proposal for $3.5 million to establish a county fire vehicle replacement fund. And when you click on that particular tile, what you'll see is a lot of data visualizations around the age of the fleet, how many miles are on each vehicle, and also how much it's costing to maintain all of our fleet for fire currently. So the goal for this particular initiative is to reduce the maintenance costs of our fire fleet over time with the funds that have been allocated. And Shannon, did you want to explore data on one of them? Okay. So this is just one example of the tool. Our plan is to also use it to build out the Shared Vision 2025 dashboards. And this is where all of our departments will be going to update their performance data, and we'll be asking for updates on Measure A proposals so that it'll all be online as opposed to paper. Now, the second example we wanted to show you was on school safety. So this is the proposal to add 2 school resource officers. And some of the visualizations here include showing there's a bar chart on the percentage of 7th, 9th, and 11th grade students by gender who rate their school as safe or very safe. There are also some maps on where we currently have school resource officers. And the one on the left that Shanna just went into shows the map of perceived school safety by school district. And if the dots will come up. Okay, but what we'll do eventually is to show that there are school districts that have a higher perception of safety than others that could lead us to allocate more resources in those areas over time. But the mapping is a very powerful tool as part of the Socrata dashboard, so we'll be using more of that to show activity for the board and for the public on where we are as far as resources and what outcomes are being achieved in all of these areas. So is this the school resource? Yeah, this is where school resource officers are. Okay, so these are currently all the school districts. The dots represent school districts where we have school resource officers assigned. Great. So we want to thank John Walton in particular because he did bring us to the 21st century when it came to open data, around the open data portal, and then dragging Mr. Adler along with the open checkbook, and then the dashboards today. So we do want to thank him and his staff and his team, Beverly Thames and Andrew Kenmore and Jean-Francois Barth in particular. And I especially want to thank Jim and his staff. They had to build out these dashboards in the middle of doing budget production. So I thank them for that, and they'll be busy building this out over the next 3 months. So we are launching this today officially, and there will be a press release going out. And thank you to Supervisor Slocum and Pine for contributing to that.
It's great.
Very cool.
Okay.
Mr. President, that brings us to the Board of Supervisors. You may not want to spend a lot of time on this.
Well, you never know. May have a lot of questions. Might add something to it, right?
The performance goals for the board were 80% of shared vision 2025 community impact goals met or moving in the right direction, and 100% of Measure A goals were met. No major changes in either fiscal year for your budgets. I might add just as a parenthetical, this year I believe it was $50,000 we put into the community services budget in my office that Peggy Jensen's responsible for unallocated projects that come up in supervisorial districts during the course of the year. That's always an issue, that something comes up and we know it will come up that we don't anticipate, and it's not of a major thing that you need to go to the contingency reserve and transfer the money, but the board doesn't have enough money in its own budget, each board member, to do it. So this is kind of the in-between, and gives you a resource to go to.
I was just going to comment on that. Actually, Supervisor Slocum and I were able to, last year, came up with $25,000 to help the Sheriff's Department and Redwood City Police on a TAP 2 removal program that maybe one day we'll show you. Maybe if we can get the sheriff to come and show. It's very important for kids, young men, young women who are involved in gangs to be able to get those TAP 2s off, because otherwise they're sometimes unemployable. So that was kind of a good example of where we did this kind of a fund is helpful.
Right. So the board budget for 13-14 represents a net county cost of slightly under $200,000 and really reflects changes due to cost of living. And for 14-15, again, very slight changes representing cost of living changes in your budgets. And that concludes the presentation.
Can I have a motion?
Well, I just want to comment on how efficient our budget is and how well we put that together. It was probably the fastest one today. And I'll move approval.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. And last, but is the grand jury, Mr. Maltby?
This is a required budget, and this represents primarily the expenditures for our grand jury audit, which produces the annual audit and financial statements for the county. Recommend your approval.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
It was moved by Supervisor Groove and seconded by Supervisor Pine. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So we will now break for lunch. Come back at 1:30.
Are we going to do non-departmental, like, after she's done?
Yeah. Okay, well, we will reconvene our budget hearings on September 18th. And before we do that, we have a speaker on item 2, 3, and 4. Marty Fox. Martin, you've got 3 speaker cards. I'm sure it's all on the same subject, so I'll give you 3 minutes to handle all 2, 3, and 4.
Well, actually, it's not all on the same subject, President Horsley, because I wanted specifically to conclude my remarks by congratulating you on instituting a new 2-year budget process. It is the most impressive of the 3 that I've attended, and I think you've laid a tremendous base with the cooperation of the other members of your board. The other ones are also separate subjects, because the Department of Defense has plans to reduce troops by over 100,000 over the next year. And we're going to be seeing more and more veterans coming back from 3, 4, 5, 6 deployments. And all we have to do is go back to Monday and understand what the potential is there. So that was another subject I was going to talk about. And the third subject I was going to talk about is the heroism of a mother who took away successfully a knife from her son here in San Mateo County just a few days ago. She avoided getting stabbed. Yes, they all deal with untreated mental illness. The issue is, are we going to take preventative measures? And if we're going to take preventative measures, are we going to take effective ones that we're interested in measuring by positive outcomes? And that's why I brought your attention to pages 2-64 and 2-68 of the recommended budget, because apparently we are willing to count treatment successes for alcohol and other drug abuse, but we're not willing to count something I think deserves to be counted just as much, and that is treatment compliance and treatment commitment for mental health disorders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. So we will now begin our social services with the Human Services Agency, Beverly Beasley Johnson, Director.
Good afternoon, President Horsley, honorable members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and Mr. Sacco. I'm here today to present the Human Services Agency's 2013-14 and 2014-15 budget. For fiscal year 2013-14, our recommended budget is $193 million. This represents $32 million in county general fund, which leverages another $161 million in state and federal sources. The agency will be adding 50 positions, 25 which are for the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, 10 positions as a result of caseload growth in children and family services, 12 positions as a part of our Measure A strategies, and 3 support positions for the agency. I would like to highlight that the board's investment of $2.2 million in net county costs above last year's budgeted amount will leverage an additional $10 million in federal and state funds for programs and services that benefit the residents of San Mateo County. For 2014-15, the Human Services Agency will reduce its budget by a total of $2.5 million due to the proposed net reduction of 17 positions. The reductions consist of the Human Services of the Healthcare Reform Planning Team and positions that have been added for ACA implementation. I do wish to convey that the future workload for the Affordable Care Act is unknown. Our goal is to enroll as many residents as possible during the first open enrollment period. However, we won't know the impact until we see the results following the first open enrollment. And we would be certainly bringing back to this board mid-budget cycle if we see that the positions would seriously impact our ability to engage in the second open enrollment. As we look to our accomplishments, we feel a great sense of pride. We have connected 143,000 residents to eligible programs, including our Medi-Cal, CalFresh, CalWorks, Children and Family Services, Homeless and Safety Net, Reentry, and Employment Services, to name a few. We have spent many, many months preparing for the Affordable Care Act, and in 12 days, we'll go live with our new Customer Contact Center, which will be staffed to receive and connect residents to health insurance programs, whether they're warm transfers from Covered California or local residents who are looking to enroll in a health plan. We are a part of history, and we know it. We are proud to have achieved reaccreditation from COA and from CARF this year. These accreditation bodies attest to the Human Services Agency's commitment to the highest standard in administration and practices of public human services delivery. This year, we made great strides in our efforts to enhance our customer experience in our offices. On 12/12/12, we introduced the community to our remodeled lobby space in Redwood City. The two photos at the top are from our new lobby in Redwood City, and the two bottom photos are from the new Harbor Building in Belmont, which is home to our new Mid-County Services Center. We will have a ceremony for the opening of the East Palo Alto lobby next Wednesday on September 25th at 3 o'clock. And later in the fall, we will open our new lobby in South San Francisco. These changes are merely the outward manifestation of the new approach that we bring to serving residents of our county. While visits to our offices will not be necessary for many services and programs, it is our intention that if a resident must come to the office, the time spent will be a positive and productive time for them. In January of this year, we joined cities and counties around the country in completing our biennial one-day homeless count. Results showed that 2,281 unhoused and vehicularly housed residents are in need of shelter at any given time in our county. The results of these data have been used to target shelter services and our homeless outreach teams to this very vulnerable population. This year, we created and launched the 550 Jobs program for formerly incarcerated residents as part of the Service Connect model. It has been tremendously successful connecting referred clients to jobs. We have an amazing 90% show rate for those who are referred to the 550 Jobs program by the Service Connect team. And we're excited about our partnership with Code for America, a nonprofit technology organization which partners cities and counties with technology fellows who work jointly on a large community issue. Our issue is access to food and to services. We're partnered with 3 fellows who are creating a web application that will connect residents to services and programs on their smartphones or tablets. We have engaged our community with us in this effort. We held a hackathon earlier this year, and we'll host our second write-a-thon today at the One Davis Drive location. We're entering the home stretch, and we will be bringing their project to the board in early November. We are proud to have been a part of our county's efforts around the elimination of the commercial sexual exploitation of children. In Children and Family Services, our staff partnered with the courts and with law enforcement to convene a summit to examine the issue of CSEC. Following the summit, our staff put together a conference specifically for foster youth who face the issue and are at great risk of sexual exploitation. On a very different note, we are very proud of our agency's legacy of leveraging and maximizing every available state and federal dollar to fund programs which serve our residents locally. 3 years ago, during the state's fiscal crisis, we were cut $3 million in Medi-Cal. This was devastating for the agency and would have had dire consequences to the community. We approached the board, and you graciously provided us with one-time bridge funding. I'm pleased to announce that this year we were able to repay the county the $3 million by strategically leveraging unspent state closeout funding. Your commitment to our work during a very difficult time was greatly appreciated by our staff and those we serve. Thank you. For future goals, we want to ensure that we are enrolling residents into health plans, be they covered California plans, traditional Medi-Cal, or the new expanded Medi-Cal beginning October 1st. We plan to continue to support communities through our system of homeless and safety net services, partnering with our communities in Pescadero, East Palo Alto, Daly City, San Mateo. We know communities are strengthened with community-based resources. We believe that the new jail will provide the opportunity to expand our Service Connect model with an enhanced focus on locally incarcerated residents who are in need of the programs and services that are offered through the Human Services Agency. And we're very excited about an emerging plan in Redwood City, North Fair Oaks, to better connect the Human Services Agency and the library, creating a North Fair Oaks full-service center where we support each other's efforts to provide services that are responsive to the individual needs of a community. For our Agile Organization pilot, we, in conjunction with Joanne Ward and the County Manager's Office, have identified a termed project to eliminate an overpayments caseload. Overpayments of benefits can occur when a client receives an incorrect benefit amount, whether due to client error or agency administrative error. We deconstructed the flow of our cases using a lean, light business process redesign effort. We redesigned our processes, we added real-time quality assurance, and are utilizing 2 temporary staff who will work over the next 2 years to eliminate the caseloads. We have appreciated the support of Joanne Ward as we tackle this very big and long-standing issue. We know that children placed in foster care have better outcomes the more visits and connections that they retain with their families. In order to expand our network of visitation services, we're working with the Peninsula Clergy Network to develop community-based and congregation-supported visitation centers. These sites help us to ensure safe and frequent contact between children and their families in familiar environments. The San Mateo County Works program is greatly expanding its subsidized employment program. Subsidized employment provides 6 months of wage offset for up to 50% of a qualifying employee's wages. This strategy is good for job seekers, it's good for employers, and is good for the local economy. We are enhancing our use of data to report outcomes and manage for results. Decisions are data-informed and results-focused. One of the most significant initiatives in my 38-year career will be our implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Many individuals and families will seek information about the new programs, and in addition will be able to now apply for these very health coverage programs over the phone during extended hours of operation until 8 p.m. during the week and on Saturdays until 5. And they won't just receive information, but will actually enroll in an insurance plan. The Human Services Agency has been actively engaging with community partners to inform and coordinate Affordable Care Act implementation efforts. Most recently, the agency partnered with the Health Coverage Unit, the Health Plan of San Mateo, and Seton Medical Center to provide a healthcare reform summit with over 80 participants in attendance. We provided partners with outreach materials for their offices and their staff and answered many, many questions about rollout and access. A special thank you to our partners who are joining us in this really important effort. And this would not be a budget presentation without my commenting on CalFresh. Compared to last year, we have increased the number of families receiving CalFresh benefits by 17%. Today, over 12,000 families are receiving the CalFresh benefit. Through our continued partnership with our community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, school-based organizations, we remain focused on our goal of reaching out to thousands of other families who need food and nutrition services. In San Mateo County, we have decided that we want to be a county where our residents who are hungry or who are food insecure have places to turn for assistance. Our agency's goal is that by 2015, 20,000 San Mateo County residents will receive the CalFresh benefit. In Children and Family Services, we are committed as an agency to reducing the number of moves for children who are placed in foster care. Approximately 25% of our children in foster care have had 3 or more moves in the first year of placement, and a third of that number have 5 placements. But we have a plan. Through our partnership with the Clergy Network, we know that there are 264 congregations in San Mateo County, and if only one family from each of these congregations decides that their ministry is to be a foster adopt home for our children, we will double our capacity and enhance stability. Another initiative is connecting emancipating foster youth to employment services. The agency has partnered with Human Resources for the STEP program for the past 5 years, giving 70 foster youth a paid summer internship working experience in a county department. We look forward to enhancing this program and creating a Step Up program, which can go even further than offering summer employment. This would offer a year-round employment program for foster youth in a county agency. The San Mateo County Works program intends to enhance job opportunities for target populations such as veterans, former foster youth, and formerly incarcerated residents by providing customized job fairs, expanded community-based job information centers, and robust one-on-one case management. The strategy also utilizes a job development specialist who works to identify jobs for the population in San Mateo County. As you are aware, the CalWorks program is now time limited to 24 months. This has created an urgent mandate to rapidly engage our clients in meaningful activities leading to gainful employment. Employment services staff are focused on utilizing effective strategies to move these clients to employment and will have committed to demonstrate their accountability by tracking and reporting CalWorks client participation rates on a regular basis. Measure A's value to San Mateo County residents will be felt for years and years to come. Thank you for your commitment to invest in the community, and we have 5 proposals which we believe create immense value for our county. The first is the HOT team expansion, HOT standing for the Homeless Outreach Team expansion. The one-day count demonstrated that we needed more HOT teams reaching out and providing on-the-ground support to homeless and fragilely housed residents. We currently have HOT teams in Redwood City covering South County and San Mateo for Central. We will now have HOT teams serving the northern part of the county and the coast side. Thank you very much for this expansion. And thank you to this board for your support of the homeless in East Palo Alto. We know that East Palo Alto has 3 times the number of homeless per capita of any other area in the county. Your efforts to provide a 24/7, 365 shelter in this community, we believe will save lives. Thank you feels really inadequate. The Measure A funding will allow us to launch 5 family resource centers embedded within core agencies. We will have a presence in the North County, Pacifica, San Mateo, Pescadero, and East Palo Alto. These staff will support 22 schools, connecting them to a range of early intervention and prevention strategies, including enrollment in eligible programs and services. As a result of Measure A, we will be able to increase foster youth access to supportive adult volunteer advocates through our CASA partners. These relationships provide valuable support to youth during some of the most difficult times in their lives. And Measure A funding through our partners at Star Vista will provide a 24/7 hotline for any resident in the community who has a concern about a school-aged child with mental health issues. They will provide bilingual support to the youth, to their families, and will serve any school in our county, providing services for up to 12 weeks. I join my colleagues, the other department heads, in acknowledging your leadership and your commitment to make really important investments in the future of our county. I end this presentation with a big thank you. I know that I've gone over, but since this is my last budget, I took a little bit of license.
You can
There
have
are
as
too
much
many
time
people
as you
to
like.
thank. Mr. Sacco and his staff, thank you. To my county department colleagues, other department heads, and other departments with whom we work. To my community partners who stand shoulder to shoulder in the work. And to the residents of the county who have been so generous in whether it's the Hallmark Fire or the Children's Fund Holiday or Back to School Backpack Drive. Thank you to Mr. Maltby for his leadership and support, and to the board, thank you. Thank you to my directors, to my management leadership team, and finally, thank you to my staff who have worked so hard on behalf of our residents. And to them, our little slogan, quality matters and you matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Questions from the board? Supervisor Slocum?
I'd just like to ask Beverly, why is President Horsley in all the pictures?
Why not?
I'm not sure. He's the president.
Because I show up.
Another pretty face. I did have one quick
ahead.
question. It's not a big one, and I'm not sure. In the budget book on page 3.6, it has staffing level at 57, but in here it says 50. Is there some place where you eliminated after the budget a couple positions? Oh, September change. Okay, that's fine. I was gonna say I was trying to give you 7 more, but
We'll take 'em.
anyway, I was just curious. Okay, no, great job. I mean, you have a lot on your plate. These are going to be some big years ahead with this Affordable Care Act, plus realignment, plus, you know, all the other needs that, as fresh as it gets, I was really happy to see that those numbers have gone up and you've got a great goal of 20,000. That's terrific. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to your staff as well.
Supervisor Pine?
Thank you for presentation and for all the hard work and good work you've done for our citizens that are most vulnerable. And that's our core duty. I just had to follow up on the CalFresh efforts. So, you know, try to move the needle from the 12,000 to 20,000, and I think you said by 2015.
Yes.
So, could you just to provide a little more background on some of the strategies for increasing the number, you know, over those next 2 years?
We believe that significant opportunity exists with the Affordable Care Act. We will have the opportunity to touch clients or residents who may have never applied for any public benefit before, and we have a commitment to offer what we're calling horizontal integration. So once we have their information, we will be able to very readily look and determine whether they're eligible for anything else the agency offers, and CalFresh is a very likely program that they may be eligible to connect to. In addition, by having our increased or expanded family resource centers, having staff and benefits analysts placed back in the community, we believe that having school-based access will also enhance. We know that there's a connection between eligibility for CalFresh and eligibility for free and reduced lunch. And so leveraging those relationships in the schools, making sure that those kids and their families are informed of their eligibility, their concurrent eligibility for CalFresh, are all strategies that will help us to achieve that goal.
Okay, thank you.
May I follow up on Supervisor Pine's question? With with what Congress is doing with the Farm Bill, how will that harm or affect us?
Well, it absolutely is something that we're very concerned about, because any effort, CalFresh is stigmatized, and part of the stigma is what keeps people from applying for a benefit that they may in fact be eligible for. And so any contraction federally could definitely have impacts on eligibility rates for residents in our county. But we believe that currently there are individuals who are eligible under current rules who haven't accessed the program.
Do we have a percentage idea of what it will do in reducing our San Mateo County dollars?
I have to turn to my self-sufficiency director. Are you aware of the impact of the proposed farm bill?
Okay.
We'd have to get back to you.
Supervisor Tessier?
Just one more question, and you said it, I just didn't catch it all. You were talking about some additional services out in the 5 different communities for the at-risk children. Could you repeat
Yes.
the communities?
Oh, for our family resource centers.
Right. I remember you said Pacifica was one.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
Yeah, you said it, and I just.
No, I have
wanted-
it. I have it here. It's
Puente is
very
one, I
close,
think.
too. Okay, we will have,
I know Puente is one, I think Daly City?
okay, here we are. We have in Pacifica, San Mateo, Daly City, Pescadero, and East Palo Alto.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just have one question, and it's, well, first of all, I just want to say, Beverly, you've always impressed me as somebody who really cares about your staff and really cares about the people that you serve, so I salute you for your great service to this county, to the people of this county. The question is on page, well, you probably don't have the whole thing in front of you, but it's Children and Family Services, and it talks about CFS working closely with other divisions, et cetera, and it says a commitment to provide enough funding to differential response agencies to address the pre-child welfare caseloads. I'm not sure, what are differential response agencies?
We have contracts with 2 or 3? Two agencies, 2 providers. Differential response cases are cases that are referred to the hotline, but based on the information provided, they don't meet the risk threshold for CPS involvement, but there may be issues in the family that they could use a community-based response towards. And so we have contracts with 2 providers who provide that services, one in the north and one who is based in Star Vista and Daly City Partnership are our 2 providers.
Okay,
And they serve countywide.
okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Supervisor Pine?
That's a question perhaps for County Manager Maltby. I know the Corps had met with some of us, and I believe met with you as well, about a request for some funds for 1314 to provide one-time payments to help people stay in their apartments, security deposits, first month rent. And I don't know if you were going to bring that forward or where that was.
Thank you for the question through Supervisor Horsley to the members of the board. There are really 3 issues that have been raised by the core service areas over the core service agencies over the last several months. One is, which you identified as a need for emergency funding, primarily for housing. Second is a longer-term issue about what the strategy is when with the termination of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation $500,000 emergency grants next June. And the third is, in general, cost of living increase, if you will, for these vital agencies. So let me try to address each of those issues. The ask from the core service agencies is approximately $380,000, I believe, for additional assistance for the current fiscal year 14 to provide for those needs. I think that money should be appropriated in the budget, but I have a proviso that I think we need to add, and it really relates also to the strategy for the long-term funding for emergency services through the core service agencies. I think we need to use this fiscal year in order to develop a long-term strategy about how we go about meeting the emergency needs in the community, what those needs are, how long they should be addressed, what's a stable source of funding, or should it be indexed to unemployment rates, GA rates, some other index, so that the core service agencies would have a dependable, stable source of funding. All of those issues get tied together. And so while I recommend that we appropriate an additional $380,000, we need to engage in that conversation through the Human Services Agency. Raina Ferralis will also be a point person from my office and bring back a plan to you. I'm thinking probably about February or March for your review and approval, so that then we could go forward with a sustainable relationship. And thirdly, with respect to the issue of COLAs, I'm certainly not unsympathetic to that. They've been 5 years without a COLA. But what my recommendation has been consistently to the board is that so have most of our employees. And through their generosity and sacrifice, we've been able to really maintain a high level of service to our community that other counties couldn't during this period of time. And as you know, it will be 6 years, about this time next year, that our employees have been without a COLA. We currently are engaged in discussions with AFSCME and SEIU, and among the subjects being discussed is the possibility of an early COLA for those employees. If that comes to fruition, then I would certainly come back to the board with a recommendation for COLAs for some of our critical nonprofit agencies. So it was kind of a long answer, Mr. Pine, but I hope that addressed the question.
No, thank you. It definitely does. I'm very, very supportive of the idea of helping the courts with that emergency housing assistance in this upcoming fiscal year. As we start to pull out of the recession, of course, we now see there's a complete lack of housing, and rents are just going through the roof. So if anyone hits a hiccup in their life, that payment, that 1 month payment, is all of a sudden substantially more than it was in the past. So it's kind of the dark cloud of the improving economy is our rents are just impossible. So I think that would be money well spent. And I would also comment that in meeting with the corps and trying to learn more about them, it became apparent to me that they're all very different. Some of them are associated with cities, some aren't, some are big, provide direct services, some don't, some just do referral. And I think a close look at how they operate, what their mission is, how they integrate with our mission, what they do as opposed to what HSA does, it would be really time well spent. And they do face this issue next year with the Silicon Valley grant combined with the county matching funds of $500,000. It's available for 13-14, but will not be available in 15, the next fiscal year. So this is the time to really think about it, because they face a real they face a real issue.
Unfortunately, a rising tide has not lifted all boats, and we know that rents have increased by about 17% in the county. So in that case, do I have a motion to move this forward? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, Beverly, and thank you for keeping me in all the pictures. I appreciate that. I'll be right back. Let's go. Let's move forward. Yeah. Let's move forward. Yeah. Let's do it.
That's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Okay. Next up is the Department of Child Support Services, Ileana Rodriguez, Director.
Good afternoon, President Horsley, honorable members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Holland, Mr. Sacco. It's my pleasure to present to you the Department of Child Support Services recommended budget for fiscal year 13-14 and 14-15. The mission of the department is to enhance the well-being of children and the self-sufficiency of families by providing professional services to locate parents, establish paternity, and establish and enforce child support and medical support orders. In terms of accomplishments, our benchmarks this past year continue to outpace that of our national and statewide averages. And if there's a story to tell here, how do you continue to improve performance with a decade pretty much a flat funding. And I think this slide paints the picture. While the full-time FTEs have continued to decline, about 30%, I've isolated the period of the recession. Something happens about 2011 where performance, although the funding remains flat, starts to improve. Well, I think that's the accomplishment, was the implementation by staff of two performance tools. This one being a goal calculator. And once a year, obviously we're driven by our benchmark measures, our performance measures. Once a year we get together and review those initiatives that we instituted the prior year and what the results were, and talk about what we can do to improve outcomes for families. In this particular tool, what happens is the caseworker, each caseworker's name and targets are loaded. What this tool does is it enables us to see our performance measures at an individual level. We've always presented at a departmental level, but as you well know, strong organizations are able to align from line staff all the way up the organization. And this is what it does. This is one particular employee where you can note in the box above, perhaps not as clear, our core measures. Below, why it's so powerful, as opposed to guessing any longer, we want to hit 70% collections for families. It tells employees each and every month the number of cases he or she may need to move in order to hit his individual target to improve performance for the organization. The second tool is a case management tool. So it's not enough to just tell employees that you need X number of cases to hit your targets. But this tool, we load our case data into it. They can categorize the cases here. They can say, show me my cases that are not paying, so that they focus their attention. So with limited resources, you need to do more with less. This is the way we've been able to do more with less while still improving performance, as you saw in that slide. In terms of our budget, you'll see there's a modest increase in 13-14, and that's pretty much the restoration of the cuts last year to the department. And in 14-15, there's moderate increase, just projection of some increases to benefits. For the coming years, 2 years, in terms of goals and challenges we have, I think there's no indication from the state that flat funding will change. At some point we'll run out of ideas, I'm sure, on how to improve our performance, but nonetheless we won't be complacent, and we've got some ideas for the coming years. One is to automate our law in motion presentation. So caseworkers, it is a quasi-legal office, and caseworkers prepare cases weekly for attorneys to present in court. Well, we've come up with a way, with the help of a programmer, where we can automate that for caseworkers, and attorneys will have that presented to them, just in the fashion they're accustomed to, but it'll be automated. In addition, the statistics that are gathered monthly by workers and supervisors will be automated. We are a customer-focused agency, and we still have our eye on the families we serve, and I'll demonstrate to you one tool that's coming shortly. The other focus is staff development. We can't do the work we do without well-trained staff and improving on their ability. So there is still line items to continue to develop and improve our staff's abilities. One major project, which we're working on right now, and we hope to have in place by the fall of 2014, I call this crazy mail. Jean talked about lean. Well, we stepped back and looked after automation at the state structure for how we work our mail. Well, it did make sense. If you see this snapshot, it's taking about 2 weeks from the time a piece of mail comes in the door to when it's imaged at a central location in Sacramento and then made available to our workers. So we have authority from the state to go forward and implement automated workflow and image processing. Well, we'll capture everything and do it in-house, and it'll be available in 24 hours or 48 hours. very different than the current model and takes much less personnel. From desktop to courthouse, we interact daily with our partners here, and we are in the process of automating our filing. So when the caseworker generates a summons and complaint to be filed, it's no longer going to be carried over to, photocopied in our office and carried over here for clerks to stamp and process. We will be e-filing. Estimates I'm being given is January 15th with the Superior Court. The beauty of this is that when overnight that file is created and sent to the court, and they can authorize, do their QC on their end and send it back to us, it will auto load to their case management system or their dockets and back into ours. Currently, I know you've heard about the court's backlog, but it's not unfamiliar to go to court these days and the appropriate paperwork not to be in place. This will, at least for child support, minimize that, and we already have one commissioner who is preparing electronically for the hearings, so that's great. And on October 20th, we hope that the App Store will have the child support app. We know our clients have mobile devices with them all the time. Moms, while you're at soccer games or what have you, you can check on your account. Parents can check their balance, can email our workers, can update their demographics. It is, I want to thank Kim Canyo, our deputy director, who worked with the design team and LA to get the specs in place. It's been programmed. It needs, I learned that it needs to go to Google and Apple before you can get on the App Store. So we're hoping that's where it's at now, that it'll be approved and available to our families October 20th. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to just take a moment to thank our stellar staff. We couldn't do the work we do without them. They are really change agents whenever we come up with ideas. I mean it. There's not resistance. They embrace it, and they're true partners with us in this journey. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Malpe, for your continued support, and to the board.
And thank you as well. Questions? Mr. Rodriguez, any questions?
No, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. You know, it seems like every year I figure you can't top yourself. And every year you come in with something new and different. I mean, just seeing the paper flow and the charts and being able to get all that information right in front of you, and you could have left it at that, but you had to put the icing on the cake with the mobile technology. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. So I really appreciate the effort that your department makes, because it just never ceases to amaze me.
Well, I've got great staff.
It is stunning.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Okay.
I'm going to move with a big approval.
Do we have a second to a big approval? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Ileana? Okay, next are closing remarks.
Mr. President, members of the board, actually, we have the non-departmental budget before we get to closing remarks, and it is a rather important budget. The first overhead shows you the allocation of net county cost, and that is in the individual budget units, that amount of money that needs to be funded through general county funds as opposed to departmental revenues becomes net county cost. The allocation is about 50% of our net county cost goes to criminal justice departments. About a quarter goes to health services, and the remaining amounts go to social services, community services, and administration and fiscal. The funds for net county costs come from property taxes, sales taxes, interest earnings, TOT, transient occupancy taxes, and the new vehicle rental tax. This chart indicates the revenue projections for the next 5 years. Essentially, with the exception of the new vehicle rental tax, which obviously shows a spike in 2014 as a new tax. And the property taxes that have certainly increased at a faster rate due to the improving housing market, and sales and use taxes. Most other taxes continue to produce revenues at about the rate of inflation. This perhaps depicts it better as it relates to general purpose revenues. Again, the spike, if you will, in 13 and 14 represent primarily property taxes and the growth of the new vehicle rental tax. There might be some that would question, I guess, the estimates in the out years of 2.3%. Mr. Sacco hastened to point out to me that if you draw a straight line projection over the entire term of that chart, it comes out to 2.4%. And I told Mr. Sacco we pay him big money to be conservative, and he's worth every cent of it. Departmental excess ERAF, and I've talked about this earlier, it has really begun to increase again. This year we closed on June 30th with about 98 million, almost 100 million in excess ERAF. But based on the significant uncertainties around the new funding proposals for schools, the controller is only comfortable in estimating $60 million for 2014 and no estimates for 15. We've made that $40 million for each of those 2 years. We think that's probably on the conservative side, but until we could get all this sorted out, and we just simply don't have all the data, the County Office of Education is required to make allocations to school districts. They're in turn waiting for allocations from the State Department of Education. This is a totally new law. It's never been implemented before, so some delay is certainly understandable, but ultimately our ability to make sound excess ERAF projections is going to have to wait till we get all the data, so I apologize for that, but that's the best we could do at this point. Excess ERAF, historically, according to budget board policy, about 50% over the last couple of years, a change in board policy has been used for ongoing support purposes, $40 million. The remainder have gone to capital and technology improvements, the reduction of unfunded liabilities, principally, of course, the early pay down of our pension unfunded liabilities, debt retirement, the next one, productivity enhancements through the LEAN program, and continuous improvements, cost avoidance where those opportunities present themselves, as well as seed money for new programs. The balance, of course, goes into reserves. Countywide initiatives in the next 2 years that will be funded through the non-departmental budget. We've talked about them in the preceding 2 days. This is just a summary, about $19.1 million. The same is true of capital projects. This represents $77 million. Again, all the projects are familiar to the Board of Supervisors, and of course, the bottom line, $5.5 million for debt service. That will, of course, substantially increase with the sale of bonds for the Maple Street Correction Center. Again, the use of general fund reserves. Most of these have been talked about before. The additional pension contribution, broker's fees to get the Circle Star complex leased out to the private sector. Children's Health Initiative, of course, is ongoing cost that is funded from non-departmental. Every 2 years, we have a major statewide or federal election. These are the costs of supporting those elections. The board's aware of the public administrator transition costs as we continue to go through the cases that need additional attention. The fire subsidy for county fire from $1.4 million from the general fund. I want to talk about that more in the wrap-up. So just kind of put a asterisk on that one. Emergency assistance grants, $500,000. We've just talked about that a few moments ago in the HSA budget. Our match to that is in non-departmental. The Agile Organization pilots we've talked about previously. The Measure A proposals that are funded from non-departmental, That is, they're not otherwise in departmental budgets. A contribution toward the Seton Medical Center for the current fiscal year, $11.5 million. The contribution toward Samtrans, $5 million. The Early Learning and Care Trust Fund, $5 million. And the fire engine and vehicle replacement amount for $2 million. The general fund contingencies and reserves appropriation for contingencies for the 14 fiscal year is $37.5 million. That is consistent with the board's 3% policy. Non-departmental reserves will increase this year. I previously discussed this. We anticipate the year-ending reserves to be about $142 million, most of which comes from excess ERAF, and $4 million for capital improvement projects. Departmental reserves contribute about $32.8 million to our overall reserves. This again, you've seen this particular graph before. It shows a spend down of reserves during the worst part of the Great Recession, and now the opportunity to build back the reserves. Again, I discussed that in my opening remarks. Looking ahead, we see some critical issues that we will need to deal with in the next 2 years. Development of a long-term revenue, expenditure, and cash flow projections, perhaps with some improved technology. That would include, of course, Measure A and excess ERAF. Continued development of performance dashboards, negotiation of new MOUs with the various labor organizations whose MOUs are terminating during the course of the next 2 years. I've mentioned the issue of the jail construction bonds in the fall, exploring continuous process improvements, opportunities as they present themselves, and revise the fund balance policy that would ensure a stable funding source for additional pension contributions while incentivizing departments to save. That concludes the non-departmental presentation. Mr. President, members of the board, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them or defer them to Mr. Sacco.
Any questions? Supervisor Pine?
Just one or two. On the net county cost, in the beginning of the presentation, that roughly $360 million. Does that reflect the Measure A appropriations this fiscal year? I mean, the budget book, of course, doesn't include Measure A.
There's no net county cost to Measure A because it's self-funded through the Measure A mechanism. That does not included in that allocation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If you want to be punished, I could bring Mr. Adler back to explain that to you in some detail.
Yeah, I'll take that offline. I mean, I always think of net county costs as the dollars that we have some discretion over.
Right.
Clearly, we have discretion over Measure A.
Total discretion over Measure A, but in this particular case, this is we've separated Measure A from the rest of the county in essence.
Yes. Okay. And just looking at the revenue projections, particularly the fiscal year 13. So we saw this 14.8% increase. That must reflect Measure A proceeds, because that didn't, because Measure A has been in place part of the year.
Sales taxes are up substantially as a result of the improving economy.
So this 14.8 is before Measure A.
That's correct.
Wow,
that's correct. Now again, remember, excluding Measure A, excluding 172, which are sales tax based,
right.
The county's sales tax is rather modest in the overall scheme of things because it only comes from the unincorporated area. Almost all of it comes from the airport.
That's a good point. Okay, thanks for those clarifications.
Any other questions? Okay, pleasure of the board on this. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I'm going to take a 5-minute break and come back.
Okay.
back in session in a moment. Lot of papers. Okay, we're back in session now, and we're going to go back into session. Mr. Maltby, closing remarks? You know, I'm going to do that at 5.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I do have some public comment.
Okay. Let me go through these 2 pages that you have on your dais. The first one is entitled Fiscal Year 13-15 Recommended Budget Hearings, September 16-18 Budget Changes for Consideration. There are 7 items. I want to talk about each one in particular, and I suspect there will be discussion among the board with respect to each item. I want to make sure that we've captured what the board intended. The first item is non-county library system capital funding. It was discussed the first day for South San Francisco Library. There may also be some applicability to Daly City, we're not sure, from Measure A, and it was amount of $500,000. Is there any other discussion on any?
Well, maybe I could, I did, at the first meeting prior to our budget session, I mentioned that I had had some discussions with Daly City, but I had not received the letter yet. I did in fact receive the letter yesterday requesting $100,000, and we had gotten a request from South San Francisco for about $500,000. What I'd like to propose, I mean, this would cover what I'm going to propose, and that is, with South San Francisco, one of the things we've talked about is leveraging our funds. And I really believe if we're going to do that, we need to match the funds. So what I would like to suggest for South San Francisco is that there be $375,000 matched by our $375,000. If they only put in $250, they only get $250, so it's dollar for dollar. And Daly City had asked for $100,000 for this feasibility study for the Ceremony Library. I don't think they have an exact figure, but whatever they put in, we'd match, but not to exceed $100,000. So I don't think it'll go over $100,000 anyway, because I doubt the feasibility study would be $200,000. But so what you have put in here would in fact cover both of those, should each of them hit their maximum.
The one other consideration I might ask the board to think about with respect to library capital funding outside of our system is it seems to me that there ought to be a demonstrable nexus between that funding and low-income populations. There are certainly libraries in this county that serve very wealthy communities. I'm not sure it would be the intent of the board to have county funds go to those libraries, but there's certainly some city libraries that serve low-income populations that we also serve, and so that would be the other consideration the board may want to make.
Well, I concur with that. I would recommend that we should do just that. That it should be based on, you know, the type of population that we're serving. It should be a dollar for dollar match as well. Any other comments?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. You know, and I don't know the status of some of the other cities, but in many cities there are. I think that the folks in Bellhaven, for instance, have been trying to do something for a long time. Parts of Redwood City not incorporated, and also like the North Central San Mateo area is in dire need of additional services. And I agree that we should set up some sort of matching program, and I think it should also include those libraries who are focused on literacy and don't have the space to do their literacy programs.
Okay, Supervisor Pine?
Just a point of clarification on Supervisor Tissier's remarks for the benefit of the board. The city of South Sydney asked for $500,000, but pointed out that they were going to put in $250,000. Therefore, you know, the half of that is the $375,000, and the idea would be up to that amount. So if South City could only do $250,000, the grant would be $250,000. So I think that's a good approach. The issue you raised, Supervisor Groom, about needs in other parts of the county is a really good one. You know, we might want to, through the county mayor's office, try to define a little bit more precisely what lens we're going to look at. Because I mean, off the top of my head, I could probably think of 8 or 10 libraries that could qualify. And of course, if the requirement is to come forward with matching funds, that may self-select quite a bit. But we do have these pockets of throughout the county of citizens that need service, could benefit from this service.
Through the president, if I could suggest we leave the money as we have it, but on this report back list, let us add, say for 30 days to come back with some specific criteria for the board to review and approve that would be attached to this funding. That would be okay.
That'd be good.
And I think that we probably should leave the appropriation at this point of the $500,000. I don't want to see us through the year be, constantly going back and back and back and forth. So I'll leave it at that for our budget purposes, in my opinion.
Can I just clarify? Because what I'd like to be sure of is that both South City and Daly City are part of that 500,000. And then if we come up with the criteria, whether it be this year or as we move forward in future years for Measure A monies, that people know that that's what we're looking at. Because it'll take people time, if they haven't thought about it already, it'll take them time to ramp up to figure out what the needs might be and things. So I think I just want to make sure we don't dilute the 500,000 so these two don't get.
Understood.
That's kind of that was what I was getting at, is that
Okay,
it would
thank you.
be, this is a 2-year budget. This is all we're going to appropriate for the next 2 years. And then after that, perhaps we look at it again.
But Measure A, we're going to visit every year, aren't we?
Yes.
So, we do have the potential to look at this for next year Measure A funds.
We do.
potentially.
There are at least one issue that needs to be addressed in Measure A, and there probably will be others.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach in that I think there is sufficient funds to cover these two identified needs. Work on our criteria, get the word out, and then when we do, while we want to minimize changes in the second year of a 2-year budget, this would, we could kind of figure out what that number should be.
Right. We will do that. If there are no other comments or questions on number 1, number 2, there was discussion about the need for two long-range planning positions. That has been costed at $327,000. Number 3 is a consultant study of the planning and building fees, and we have estimated the cost of that study is at $100,000. Number 4, a one-time contribution to the Parks Foundation of $100,000. Number 5, there was a fair amount of discussion of the board and about the need for some additional funding for CAL FIRE. We went back and took a look at potentially another approach that I want to discuss with the board, and that is historically, up until recent years, CAL FIRE solely be funded from the fire fund of the county. In recent years, primarily due to an indirect effect of something we talked about really during the assessor's budget, and that was the negotiations that changed the basis for assessments for airplanes at the airport, which was unsecured property tax. It substantially lowered unsecured property tax. Indirect causation was that there was a disproportionate amount of unsecured property tax in the county fire fund simply because the airport makes up a large portion of that fund, being in the unincorporated area. And that reduced the fire fund base for county fire. Subsequent to that, then the board began backfilling that with general fund contributions. Fire has never received any contributions from Prop 172 funds, which are public safety funds that can be used for fire. We've always used 100% of those funds for criminal justice. If you apply the rough percentage that fire makes up of the total fire and criminal justice expenditures of the county, it comes out to be about 2.2%, or about $1.7 million applied against the fiscal year 14. If you look at the combined request for the fire captain and the ALC battalion chief position, as well as the existing general fund contribution, it's roughly about $1.7 million. So the suggestion I would have, and I put several caveats on this, is that we utilize 172 funds to the same percentage every year that fire makes up of the total criminal justice, fire, public safety, if you will, 172 funding pot. But we back out 100% of the general fund contributions. It's almost a wash. Actually, fire would come up a little bit ahead, and that money would stay in the fire fund. But the proviso would be, that's it. I mean, you don't come back to the general fund once you do that you have to live within your resources. And, and I've said I'm not picking on CAL FIRE because I think they're an outstanding organization and certainly very cost efficient. But I've said this to all other county departments, and it applies to CAL FIRE too. We've gone through a very difficult period of time in which we have cut back on services, cut back on positions. And it's, in my mind, it makes no sense simply because times are better to start adding everything back that we cut. I think some things we could frankly do without, and some things we have to learn to do in a different way. And so CAL FIRE needs to also think through those processes and think about doing things in a different way. But I think this proposal provides adequate funding for the requested needs and in the future if the board believes that they should live within those resources going forward.
Go ahead.
Just a clarifying question on the approach. So you're suggesting a set percent?
Yes, it would be, I think it's 2.25.
2.7.
2.7.
So next year it would be?
We would multiply that 2.7 times the amount in the 172 funds, and it would produce something roughly about $1.7 million, probably a little more since that fund keeps going up every year.
Right. Okay.
Supervisor Tessier?
Well, I was just going to point,
I'm
let you know
sorry,
Carol's got
Carol?
I wanted to ask a question, and perhaps I've missed something here, but the paramedic coordinator, why is that position at the battalion chief level? And I don't know if that's what that position is in other fire departments, but that just seems high to me. That just seems like a high to me.
I think we have representative, the chief is here, so.
President Horsley, Vice President Pine, honorable board members, Mr. Maltby, Sacco, and Mr. Holland, thank you for your time today. To answer your question, yes, it is a standard position of battalion chief. In most cases, they're actually division chiefs, so we do it with a battalion chief. A division chief would be one rank higher.
Thank you.
Maybe if I could just comment, I'm fine with that. I think that's probably a good way to have some ongoing funding. And I think, Mr. Mulvey, you said that gives them funding to figure out how they want to deal with this. If they want more funding for something else, they may have to look at whether that needs to be a battalion chief or the training officer has to be the fire chief or however you want. So it gives them the flexibility of doing what they think is appropriate versus us trying to tell you what's appropriate, but you have static funding, so to speak. So I'm very comfortable doing that with the Prop 172 funds.
I'm
okay.
good. I'm also
Okay.
impressed that the county manager's office worked all that out yesterday afternoon.
Well, in all due respect to Jim and Mike Bolander, it was a fairly simple thing to apply a percentage against the fund. But what's sort of amazing is that percentage just happened to come out to be roughly what those two amounts, the request and the general fund subsidy. I mean, that's just one of the ironies of numbers sometimes that work out that way.
Oh, okay.
One more comment?
One more comment? Yes, you may have one more comment.
Okay. So I like this approach as well. Looking at this in the past, there are many places across California where Prop 172, some portion of it goes to fire. So we're not an outlier in that respect. And I like the way that it, gives some certainty to that budget in the future. It's, as a practical matter, general funds are precarious.
Okay, on to the next item.
Number 6, that's the Cordilleras facility. In discussions with our building folks, we believe that $5 million is the appropriate number next year to begin the planning process and to nail down the actual number that will be needed going forward to build the facility. So our recommendation there is a $5 million appropriation from reserves that would be used for the beginning of the design process. Number 7, we talked previously about the core service agencies. The actual number is $385,000, not $380,000, and our recommendation would be that it comes from Measure A funds. And then lastly, not on this list, but there was discussion regarding code enforcement in planning. We think the right number is about $120,000, but what we'd like to do is take about a month and add to the report back list and come back to the board with what that position or those positions should actually be, whether they're actual code enforcement officers, an ombudsman type position, combination, so that we just have a little time to think through it and bring that back to the board for approval. But today we would ask that you put in $120,000.
Yes, I'm fine with that. I would like to.
Supervisor Grimm?
Thank you, President Horsley. I'd like to add one more item, and I don't know if it's Measure A or General Fund, but we had a conversation yesterday from Melissa Lucan of Cora, and she has sent us some material, and she's asking for a medium-sized sum of money, but I want to make a different proposal. One of the things that she said struck me is that her legal ability to do legal work has been severely hampered, and I would like to propose that we perhaps give her $50,000 or $75,000 or whatever the right number is to augment her legal budget, and then make a second suggestion that in the years that I've been on this board and the years that I served on a city council, Cora has always struggled with funding, especially on the emergency calls, because the cities have begun to reduce the amount of funding that they used to put in, and so she doesn't have the ability to make that funding up. Couple of years ago, Supervisor Jacobs Gibson and I were asked to be kind of a subcommittee to meet with the Cora board, which we did, and they talked to us very candidly about the difficulty they had in raising money. They've tried to rebuild their board to get fundraisers, and they've had somewhat success, but I don't think they've had the kind of success that they've wanted. So I would like to suggest that we put some sort of task force together with cities, with the county, and with other stakeholders, and I'd be very willing to be on that, and try to figure out some sort of sustainable funding system for Cora and its especially its emergency business. But in the meantime, grant them some additional dollars to bolster their legal budget.
I'd be fine with that, and I'd also be willing to be part of that task force just to see, because I do think what happens to us, unfortunately, here at the county, is that we all come in and do the group hug, and then slowly but surely the cities peel off, and it's a much smaller hug, and it's usually us hugging ourselves. But so I agree, they need some help, but I do think we've got to get past this part where we do things with the city and then they drop off. Because a lot of these cities, that's where so much of these things happen, and it's their constituencies whose families are in need and things like that. So I would certainly be willing to go along with that, but I do think we need to have some more discussions with the cities and keep them as part of that.
Do you have a specific amount that you want to request?
$75,000 for 1 year.
Measure A?
I don't know if Measure A would be appropriate. Measure A is fine.
Mr. President, if I could add one more, and I don't have a dollar figure, and I know I saw it in the report back, but I want to be sure that we definitely have some money, and whether it just has to be an item in one of our monthly budgets, but is the, I saw it in here, wherever it is, the South County Clinic. We have a report back on the South County Clinic in October. Obviously, we have some work to do now, but I really do want to be sure that there is some funding in there for some improvements to the entry of that clinic. Now, I don't have a dollar figure. I know it's going to cost a few dollars. And I know that Samtrans has already, or the Caltrans has already done some fencing and things at their cost, not our cost, which I really appreciated. But I would like to put that as part of the budget with sort of a placeholder so that if it comes back in October or November for some funding, there's something in there.
Mr. Porter, there he is. He might want to comment on it. I suspect there's two ways we could do it. Certainly, there's sufficient money in the roads fund to be able to do that. He may need to backfill behind that, since it's probably money that's already allocated to some other purpose, but there is probably existing money in his budget to do that. But I would ask your comments.
Through the President, the Middlefield Road request that was submitted for the improvements along Middlefield, the undergrounding work, and the beautification included $1 million for that traffic signal. So it included design and all of the construction dollars we would need to build that signal. So I believe it's already been allocated in the Measure A funds. Is that correct? Yeah, that's right. So we're already covered on that.
Well, that may be true, but we may not get to that signalization early enough to do the proper improvements to have some safety issues for the entry as we, that could take some time. I understand those Middlefield improvements were more of a long-range plan versus a short-term, and I think we've got a huge safety issue on the short-term, which may be just rerouting cars or right turnout, things like that. It might not, I'm not even sure if it includes signals at the moment. It could, but that's my concern as we keep talking about this Middlefield Road, and that's not going to do it for the immediate term where we've got this. It could take 2-3 years depending, and you're tying in with North Fair Oaks. I mean, I'm very concerned about this entryway.
Through the president, I certainly concur with your concern. Whatever short-term fixes are necessary can be taken out of that $1 million. It's an appropriation. Once the board adopts the budget, that'll be sitting there. At some point in time, then we might need to come back to the board and say, we're short $100,000 or something. We need a transfer to cover that. But I think we're okay for the time being.
As long as I know I've got money to spend, that's all I need to know. Okay, thank
Carly,
you.
you have $1 million, so good.
Thank you.
Let me go through then the report back list. You received some of them today. Did we get the number of e-books in circulation, or we haven't? We'll get that to you as soon as the information comes in from the library. The code enforcement staffing, you have a report, and I've discussed that. The county fire staffing, I believe you've received a report back today on that. The county fire vehicle replacement plan, there will be a report to the board for your October 1st meeting, as will a report on the timeline for completion of the North Fair Oaks plan. On October 8th, we will bring back report backs, on the North Fair Oaks plan and the parole revocations for prior to October 2011. On the 22nd, ingress and egress South County Clinic, that's the short-term improvements you were just talking about, Supervisor. On the 31st, status of client survey instrument for the private defender program. Then by the end of the year, we have 4, the contingency plan for mowing on the coast side, the county 5-year fire strategic plan, the Skylonda and Pescadero capital expenditure updates, and the lean results at the health system, as well as and the lean results of the health system. Then we will bring back in the future, we don't have dates yet, the Cordilleras Mental Health Facility funding when we get those further along in our design, the stormwater funding, and the timeline project list for ISD. Did we cover all of the requests that the board had?
And the criteria for library funding.
And today, and the criteria for library funding, correct?
I think so.
Just a little note in front of me. Just one thing I want to make sure, when we talk about the stormwater funding, I don't want just a memo to the members. I'd like to actually
agendize it for discussion,
agendize
yeah.
it for discussion,
Right.
yes, okay.
And then I just, on the Skyline and Pescadero building estimates, I think the key thing there is just kind of approach that the way we approach the new jail facility, in that we, get the input from the chief and the folks that will be in those facilities, and take into account the difficulties of the sites, et cetera, and let us know what you think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
John, I wrote a note after we had that discussion. You talked about the core service agencies, emergency shelter fund. It looked like that went in the budget. But then we talked about the term for, what we're going to do at the end of Silicon Valley and the 500,000 sort of have.
We're going to bring back a strategic plan for the cores in the spring, and that's on our list. I neglected to mention it.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Late winter probably would be the time.
And then the last thing would be, a report back on whether or not we can do COLAs for the core services, and would that come back?
That would come back at a later date as we get more information.
Okay, I'm just trying to go through my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. It looks like I got it all.
Also, we would add to that list then this criteria that we talked about for the libraries too. And we should be able to bring that back in short order.
Okay. So now we've looked at all the add backs for inclusion, the report backs. Do we now go through Measure A items?
Yeah, let's go through Measure A for the final time. This is the final.
Is that a promise?
Okay. Too much fun.
Yeah. So the first page of the Measure A add backs, the agreement with Seton, bicycle coordinator, building facilities infrastructure, co-side response coordinator, the core service agency's management performance system, county fire engine vehicle replacement, CASA, the early learning care trust fund, the East Palo Alto shelter operating expenses. Any questions on the first page? Page 2, homeless outreach teams, library capital needs, and we've obviously augmented that per today's discussion. The library summer reading programs, co-side mental services, mental health system of care for adults, North Fair Oaks general plan implementation, park department operations and maintenance, park department capital projects, prevention and early intervention for at-risk children in health and in human service agencies, the SamTrans amount, school safety, technology infrastructure, open data, veteran services. 2 items today. One had to do with Cora, the $75,000, and the other had to do with the $385,000 emergency housing for the core service agencies. That would be the total list, and if the board approves.
That says 12,000 for this year? and we have-
That's only that one page.
Right.
Oh, that one page.
It's not a
okay.
cumulative total.
Okay, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I threw a curve at the staff last minute and asked them to throw this chart together. And
Okay. So is it, the first column was 49,945.37 plus Cora plus the emergency?
Yes.
Okay, funds.
Yeah, go
We
ahead,
also
Dave.
have, the parks is 100.
100
That's a Measure
for
A item.
parks, 100 for the consultant study. Right.
Yeah, you have it all itemized.
Yes.
With the addition of Cora.
You wouldn't mind, once that all is said and done, if you could just distribute
more
a
list.
new list for
Yeah,
for
we
us?
will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to go on to item number 5 now, which is approving the actions related to the final budget change of the fiscal year 2013-14, the recommended budget. We have to adopt resolutions A, B, and C.
That is correct, and these resolutions will be updated to reflect the changes you've made this afternoon, so they will be accurate.
Both the add-ons as well as
That's correct.
the Measure A.
That's correct.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
congratulations. Do we have to take a roll for this? Or just, let's, a roll call then.
Supervisor Pine.
Aye.
Supervisor Groom.
Yes.
Supervisor Slocum.
Aye.
Supervisor Tissier.
Aye.
President Horsley.
Aye. And now I have speakers on this. Actually, there are 3 from A, B, and C. Martin Fox.
I'd like to depart from my prepared remarks to thank you, President Horsley, and you as Sheriff Horsley, and Police Chief Don Matei, because what you funded in your budget is virtually identical to what Chief Matei told me he was seeking many years ago. And his opinion was discouraging if I came to the county and asked for those kinds of things. So please accept the credit that is due, because when I first came to these budget hearings, we were talking about closing half of 3AB. We eliminated a psychiatrist residency position, and nobody did anything when 22 beds were closed over at Sequoia Hospital which has forced numerous family members to have to go outside of the county to visit their loved ones when they're on a 5150 hold. You deserve the credit, all of the credit, for carrying the water and doing the heavy lifting. And I appreciate it, and I want you to know that I acknowledge it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Before we close, I'd also like to thank the county manager, your whole staff, as well as my staff, Sarah Rosendahl, Chris Hunter, Nicholas Calderon. When we go through this budget, we go through it as a team and rip it apart and come up with suggestions, comments, and things of that sort. I want to also thank all the department heads. We ask lots of questions. You answer them promptly, efficiently, effectively. I want to also I say goodbye to Deborah Torres in the audience. You've been a great staff person for the county, and I've enjoyed your intelligence and your wit, and just your participation in a number of subcommittees with me as well as other board members. Supervisor Tessier?
I too want to thank Mr. Maltby and his staff and Jim Sacco and all the budgetary groups. And obviously, we always like to thank our staffs too, because they do a lot of the heavy lifting. They make us look good. But also I want to thank the department heads, but I also want to thank the employees. You know, you do the real work. We're just trying to make it easier now that we have the opportunity to make it easier and come up with new and innovative ways to do things, but also to try to provide those gaps in services. So I want to thank all of you for your hard work. And to all our nonprofit groups, our core agencies, many of you are here. Thank you for the good work you do in the community as well. So thank you.
Let me add to what you've said, is just thank the voters. If you had not approved Measure A, we would not be able to today have accomplished as much as we wanted to with new services, new facilities, I think in some cases new hope for some communities. And so, as usual, the San Mateo County voters were generous. They were. I hope they feel that we have been wise as we have spent the first year of that money, and with our performance measurement new series, we will know in a year and a half whether we've been productive or not. So, and I also want to thank the budget team for doing this 2-year budget. I hope you felt it was as good as I did. Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Anybody, any other comments? Is that it?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Supervisor Slocum.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. President.
What's his name?
What's his name?
That's okay. Oh, being the new person up here, I was a little apprehensive going into the budget hearings, but I have to tell you that Mr. Sacco, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Holland, and the analysts that were involved made it very easy. Everybody was there to answer what must have seemed like stupid, endless questions, and your time and patience is appreciated. And just to echo Supervisor Groom's, I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards. I'd like to thank all these people, but thank you to the employees, thank you to the community organizations, and a special thank you to the voters who approved Measure A. It certainly made a difference in terms of my coming to the board, because while I was campaigning, I thought we were going to be in this era of cutbacks and tiers and those kinds of things, and it really made a difference. And I'll just thank them on behalf of the board and the county.
And thank you to my fellow board members for making it enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I'll add my comment. I want to extend my thanks to everyone involved in this process. The budget's always difficult, and of course, when you're looking out 2 years, it's adds extra challenge. So hundreds, if not thousands, of people were involved in this effort, a monumental task, and very well done. And of course, a budget, is a reflection of the policies and objectives and values of San Mateo County. And I'm very proud of the work that we've collectively done in emphasizing some very important values and our commitment to serving the community and being a just and fair county.
And with that, we will adjourn.